The second round of the iRacing.com Pro Series of Road Racing comes to you from Twin Ring Motegi. This 3-mile, 14-corner racetrack will play host to the second round, and it has been very difficult for these drivers all week long, especially under braking into some of these very tight corners. Along with in the booth, as always, Marius Gollenbeck. Guten Tag.
Guten Tag and welcome guys here on Twin Ring Motegi, a relatively new track here in the service, one of the newest ones along with Oran Park here. Very slippery track, not loved by many but hated by others, so I'm not really sure how the drivers will cope with that. It's a great track for watching, a great track for close racing. We've seen that in the DWC, and yeah, just hoping for a great race today.
Some tracks that some people don't like and others hate, apparently. There's Marius Gollenbeck's insightful information, but the track was developed in 1996, opened in August 1997, originally for Honda to play a test role when they were originally trying to go into American open wheel racing. But this road track doesn't get used that often, and that means, as Marius said, it's very slippery around here, especially on those first couple of corners. And you'll see Marius tyres, tyre wear, tyre temperature, that is going to be the critical factor here today. When you compare it to Watkins Glen, I think we're going to see a lot more drivers having incidents.
Very likely, especially we've seen the pit entry can be a bit of a problem there. It's very narrow, you go straight and then you go into a chicane, and you also need to watch the pit limit, of course. So we've seen in the WC some drivers had a bit of an issue there. Especially, well, this shouldn't be a problem, but well, the first turns are very wide. It's generally very wide track, so it's kind of hard to keep track of your opponents. And it's not exactly a short track after all, so many opportunities for overtaking. Yeah, lots of close racing, and even with the current draft model, should be overtaking possibilities somewhere.
Having a look at these drivers on their qualifying laps, we're having a look at Tom Mahler for the time being in. After last week, you know, you look at Alessio Ciacola, he's in the driving seat, but drivers like Imos Bindel, Eugene Amirimi, Enzo Benito, we're expecting them to once again be up the field, but at the moment, Ricky Stanaway in that 72 car currently set in provisional second position, doing a sterling job there.
Yeah, Stanaway expected to have a great race in the first round at Spa already, but well, he's not exactly disappointed there, but he's not exactly fulfilled the expectations either, so Stanaway has ground to make up here. Still, nevertheless, Alessio Ciacola sitting in the provisional pole position here, the winner of the first round on Spa-Francorchamps, mainly the guy you would expect to get the pole and win the race here. Still, very strong guys at Spa, along with Emil Spindel, also David Decor and Enzo Bonito completing the top 5, and they are not that far off.
They're not. No, it is a very tight grid up again, and Stanaway is just beginning what will be... no, in fact, Stanaway has completed his last lap, so he will not be getting pole position here today, by the look of it. But it's a very tight grid once again, as was the case last week at Spa-Francorchamps. That's going to be, you know, the critical factor all season long. We saw how difficult overtaking can be. This track, it's got some big braking zones. Turn 11 is a really good place to try and set up a move, but still, it's very treacherous down there, and qualifying is worth quite a lot in this series.
It is definitely, and speaking of qualifying, Moga Philo, as we've called him DJ Philo last race, I really like that nickname, has currently moved into the second position, just about 2 thousandths ahead of Richie Stanaway. So, not all the drivers have completed their 3 laps yet. Still though, Richie Stanaway has done the 3 laps, so the qualifying format, if you don't know it, 15 minutes of time, but also limited by 3 laps. So if you've done your 3 laps, you're done, and you'll just have to watch the others do their laps, as David Decorp also improves his lap time, and that should have been his 3rd lap there, and he puts the car into 2nd position ahead of Philo.
But Ciacola is the only driver in still 1 minute 24, with a current time of 1 minute 24.976. Only 6/100ths of a second faster than Decor, but you know that edge that you're going to get being the only driver in 1 minute 24 as everyone else is in 1 minute 25. That's going to be worth quite a lot when you're sitting down on the grid in about 20 minutes time. And in fact, Ciacola is going back out onto the racetrack, so can he try to improve his time? We'll see. We'll keep an eye on him. This is Alessio Ciacola in at the 54 car, just on his out lap now. So he'll have one more flying lap attempt here at Twin Ring Motegi. Your top 5 as it stands is Yusuke Akala in the 54 car in the first position. David Decor in the 58 car currently sat in provisional second, with Modcar DG Philo in third, Richie Stanaway in fourth, Enzo Benito rounding out your top 5. Philo is on another lap in that Red Bull number 62 machine, so he's got the chance to perhaps try and move up into second position. He's only 3/100ths of a second behind Decor at the moment. And that second place, I mean, Philo had a great start at Spa last week, and he'll be looking for the same once again.
Yeah, and it looked like the top runners in the Spa qualifying are virtually the same ones here. I mean, even Spindle in 6th, I'm missing Samuel Libert there at the top. Nevertheless, Enzo Bonito in 5th, Stanaway now in 4th, he's been a bit far down in Spa. Philo in 3rd, Davide Kopp also running front, and Alexius Jacola in pole position. Still, we're waiting for Philo to complete his lap here, as you so said, Alexius Jacola comes across the line. Not really sure if that lap will be enough, and he's starting his last lap of the day.
Yeah, and DG Philo comes past the line. It is a 1 minute 25.112, so he is slower. He will, for the moment, start in the 3rd position for this race. I'm checking in, though, on the 76 car of Yuji Narumi on his home track. Not the performance he would have been after. He's down in the 7th position, and that's going to be slightly disappointing for him, Marius.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's disappointing. It's really close here, and it really looks like it's very hard to get a lap together here. Lots of opportunities for off tracks, just as on Spa. So on Spa, for example, we've seen Stanaway having a bit of an issue in the qualifying, maybe taking it a bit too easy to avoid off tracks on the fast lap. But yeah, you really have to push the car to the limit here and avoid off tracks, and it's maybe the 2/10 you gain or the 2/10 you lose. So, for example, we've also got some of the fast drivers very far down the grid this time. For example, Dave Geeling only in 14, Ryan Terpstra in 18, Joni Termele in 21, and Termele in fact has been complaining about having a relatively good lap going, but then getting an off track out of the last turn. So this can ruin your lap, and keeping an eye on Usiakola, he cancelled his last lap, so qualifying seems pretty much settled at top. Simon Cattell still on the track, Xavier Bussom's also completing his 3rd lap now, and we're 11.5 minutes over, so this should pretty much be it.
Yeah, Busson coming out of the final corner in his number 69 machine. He is currently, by the look of it, not in the field. He's got this last lap. This will get him in the 1 minute 26.419, currently all the way down in the 25th position. Simon Cartel is working on the racetrack as well, just trying to pick up where he is. Coming now down onto this back straightaway, you'll notice as we go on board with him that the track just completely falls away as they come down into turn number 11. You see it, and you can brake so late here, but at a distance of perhaps 10 meters from nailing the apex and just going completely off track. Not putting the car out as wide as you see most others do, being very conservative there as he comes into the final corner. Out he comes. He's currently sat in the 10th position in the 57 machine, a time of 1 minute 58.558, and he does not improve. He's now on his final flying lap. And Marius, he's really in a good position, and he's got that last lap in the bag with no real pressure on the racetrack to play mind games with.
Yeah, and it's a strategy we've seen in DWC. For example, Hugo Lewis and also some other drivers tended to make the lap relatively late, so you could just sit there, wait, and see what you need to do. And at a track like this, or also at a track like Spa, you probably want to know how fast you really need to go. It's so easy to get an off track just like that, and once you just push it a bit too far, you get one, and you don't really need to push it that far if you know where you're going. For example, if Cattell knows he can do a 0.4 and he now sees 2 people ahead of him are very close, so it might be worth the risk, he might take it. Nevertheless, he's already in 10th position, so that is a good start. First race has been relatively well for him, so good second race so far. Just wondering, lap looks really good so far. No one else on track, so it could be very well possible that he improves this lap.
He could do, and for those who are still wondering why going off track is so important, yes, in theory, you could, still do a competitive lap time. However, the way the rules work, if you go off track at any point during your flying lap, regardless of if you gain time or not, that lap will be invalidated. Simon Cattell now coming past the start-finish line for the final time. He sets a time of 1 minute 25.490, moving him up into the 8th position. So a nice lap for him there.
exactly what he's been hoping for, I guess. From a 5.4 or 5.5, he's just improved a little. I mean, less than 1/10, but he's improved 2 positions, and that's a lot more important. I mean, he's one entire row ahead of where he were. So for the start, especially with the opportunity to make up lots of positions, that is still a really good possibility there.
So to run through your provisional race grid, we do have to stress that it is still provisional. It will be Aleski UC Akola bringing the field to the green flag here at Twin Ring Motegi, a time of 1 minute 24.976. The only driver to get into the 1 minute 24s all qualifying session long. David, of course, a good qualifying by him in the 58 car will line up alongside him in the second position. Modcar DG Philo will line up in third with Richie Stanaway in fourth. Enzo Benito will line up in the fifth position with Emil Spindel in sixth. Yudi Namirimi, he perhaps was after a little bit more. He will line up in the seventh position with Simon Cattell in eighth, Christian Lorente in ninth, and Paul Ilbrandt rounding out your top 10. And just to pause that there, Marius, very quickly, that top 10 is pretty much, as you said, the same top 10 that we saw back at Spa last week. So the same cars still kind of coming to the fold here.
Yeah, not exactly the same order. Just a bit of mixing up there, but more or less it is virtually the same. So it really seems that the same kind of drivers which dominated here on Spa will be the ones leading the grid on Motegi. Nevertheless, we've seen how close it has off the top at Spa. So, for example, we had, I think it was place 8, place 9, where we had intense battles all the way, all the race long. So it could just be that these places will tend to get mixed up here. Nevertheless, I think main rival for taking the championship here will be Alexei Usiakola. He's once again set the pole position here, followed by Filho, and well, he's been very strong in the race. Enzo Bonito has been very strong, and also Davide Cobb. So I don't think Usiakola can be safe, but he looks well prepared.
And just to add in, Richie Stanaway did qualify in the fourth position in the 72 car. Sorry for missing that, Stanaway. In 11th position, Thiago Alfaro in the 66 machine, a time of 1 minute 25.582. In the 12th position is Miguel Martin. Pierre Ubizo in the 13th position, Dave Geelink in 14th, Jason Lover in the 15th position, Timo Evening down in 16th with Marcus Cartana in 17th, Ryan Terpstra in 18th, Jesper Pedersen in 19th and Fabio Di Carmo in the 20th position. And things are a little bit more shaken up here, but again, it seems to be drivers 10 through 20 are about the same kind of drivers as they were last week. So it seems as though they're kind of bunched up together. They're just switching themselves around those top 10 drivers, 10, 11 through 20.
And the times seem to be very close together. I mean, just taking a look at the times alone in the 125.8, for example, would have Timo Ivonen only in place 16. He's with a 1:8.16, and Marcus Cannon in 17 has got exactly the same lap time. And then it continues 8:23, 8:27, 8:44, 8:97, and 8:98, and that's place 22 already. So you see how close it is off the top here. And these guys are not exactly far off the top either. With place 22, you're less than a second off the lead.
Yeah, and it's, again, so close. Looking down for the final couple of drivers, 26 drivers seem to be entering this race. In the 21st position, it is Yoni Tamana in a time of 1 minute 25.896. Michal Pino just 1/1000th of a second behind in 22nd. Andrea Boldi in 23rd. PJ Sturgios, a difficult day for him, down in the 24th position. Xavier Bussons, we saw how he had difficulties in his first 2 timed laps, really had to make it work on his final lap, but struggled down in the 25th position even in the 69 car. Rez Richards does not set a qualifying time. And when this all comes into play, Marius, I mean, it is tough to overtake here, but it's in some ways going to be a little bit easier to make up positions compared to Spa last week, just because of how important tyre temperature, tyre wear, and all that's going to be, and strategy is going to be crucial here.
Strategy is definitely going to be crucial. We've seen it on Spa, a little bit of different strategies. Remember Samuel Libert especially running a very long middle stint, and then being a bit of a surprise in the last stint then. There could be possibilities here of trying a similar thing. So once you're stuck, maybe coming in earlier. Once you break free, maybe running a bit longer if you can. However, the pit strategy, we've seen that in many races so far, not only in the Pro Series but also in the Drivers' World Championship, is definitely crucial. It can just be one lap which ruins your race or which gains you multiple positions.
So we're going to be going racing in 15 minutes time. You are watching the pre-race show, the GlacierTV Pro Series pre-race show. And when we have a look to the championship standings, of course, Yakoda leading the way, Narumi in second, DG Filo third, Spindell fourth, and DeCorps in fifth. These guys, you know, exceptional Narumi, 1, 3, 4, and 5 are lining up in the top couple of positions here yet again at Motegi. No point to qualifying, but these guys are setting themselves off to start breaking away from the pack. One driver I am looking forward to seeing, though, is Richie Stanaway in that 7th position in the championship. He's got the chance to make up a couple of places, that 4th place qualifying position.
Yeah, I think he's got ground to make up from Spa. Not exactly the thing he probably imagined. Definitely a candidate for the top 3 here in the championship. So with the series starting at Spa and Richie Stanaway being extraordinarily strong there in the Grand Prix series, qualifying for the Pro Series, you'd probably expect him to be the one to really take the lead right away, and he's been struggling the entire race. So probably put up a little bit more practice here. I mean, he's also active in real racing. Being at winter now, he probably has enough time to prepare extensively, and it just seems like this time he's got it better together.
Yeah, and having a look down the field, of course, we all need to keep our eyes out on that 25th position. It is currently Jesper Pedersen even, from Scandinavia, sat down in that 25th spot. But early on in that season, you know, that's going to be important for him. Fabio Di Carmo is sat in 26th, just 1 point outside that top 25. But as the season progresses, some drivers know they only need to get into the top 25. It's going to be interesting looking down to see who makes the cut and who doesn't. So then we're going to run through, say, your top 25 drivers currently in the iRacing.com Pro Series of Road Racing, and it is Aleski Jussi Jaakkola who is leading the way with 50 points. So it'll be the top 20 drivers. Yude Narumi in second. Modgar DG Filo in third. Emil Spindell in fourth. David DeCorps in fifth. Samuel Liebert in sixth, with Richie Stanaway in seventh. Enzo Benito in eighth. Timo Evenen in ninth. And Christian Lorente in 10th. You get yourself 50 points for winning, 40 points for second, 35 for third, 32 for fourth, and then it goes down 2 per driver as you go out of the top 10. Then PJ Sturdios in 11th position has 19 points. And in 12th is Vasily Saitiev. Xavier Bussons is in 13th. Dave Geeling in 14th. Paul Ilbrandt 15th. Yoni Tamara in 16th. With Ryan Terpstra in 17th. Miguel Martin 18th. Andrea Boldi in 19th. And Thiago Alfaro will be in the 20th position coming into this race with 10 championship points. And Marius, because we've got ourselves a couple of minutes, one of the things that these drivers also need to be aware of is their safety rating. And for those of you who've not been a member of iRacing at all, these drivers are ranked by 2 things: their iRating and their safety rating. And their safety rating is pretty important because at the end of the day, if you have too many incidents on track, you could be putting your entire pro license in jeopardy.
Exactly, the Pro License, depending on the safety rating, once you drop, it's just functioning like with any other license. So if you drop under 2, you will be losing your Pro License at the end of the season. And if you drop under 1, you will be losing it immediately. So once you have a bad race, and that could have as well been Spa last week, so you might be in the position right now to watch for your safety rating and not risk too much for risking incidents. For example, if you have one right away and your race is pretty much soon over, you'll of course have less laps made, and that will make it a lot harder for you to make plus on your safety rating. So lots of the drivers will take it a bit less cocky, a bit less aggressive this race. So let's just see how it goes. I think still we'll see excellent racing, lots of hard and close combat, and as soon as you're in the car and fighting for position, you tend to forget safety rating very quickly.
And we're going to step aside for just a couple of seconds, and we have, I believe, got one of the CST Azura videos once again, Marius.
Yeah, we do that, and it's time for you to just take a look at the track. And well, it's a new one. Might not know it. It's not really one of the most known tracks in the world. Still, though, it's a very tempting one, very exciting one. So just give it a look and see where we're racing at Twin Ring Motegi, round 2 of the Pro Series today.
Fans, it's time for those most famous words in motorsports. Drivers, start your engines!
Michael Conti comes up at a corner number 4 in the checkered flag. He wins his first NASCAR iRacing.
I'd like to apologise for that. Unfortunately, we were not able to show you the CST Azura video from Twin Ring Motegi due to some technical difficulties. We will try and bring that to you another time. But Marius, when we look at this Twin Ring Motegi road course, say it's about 3 miles in length, 14 corners. The first sector is very stop-start, and that puts a lot of emphasis on the brakes, the tyres, and these drivers are going to have some very precise turning points, especially when working in traffic.
Yeah, and that brings the setup into play once again. You need a very stable setup on turn-in. Once you turn in, you can't really afford the car to go haywire and sideways and all the time. So you just want to turn in and keep the car pointing towards the apex to really make the turn-in as stable as you can. And you said it, first 2 turns, basically 180 degrees, double right-hander. Long straight, basically as long as the finish straight, and then it's the same thing left and the same thing right again. So it's looking like yeah, a bit of a 180 degree switch there to the right, to the left, and to the right with straights in them. And then it's getting a little bit more excited as you go right and under the bridge, and then it's starting to be in the high-speed sector. So you go through the S's, 4th or 5th gear, basically 250 around that, and exit them, and then you enter hairpins already. So it's basically got all the elements of a great track. Nevertheless, it's not really liked by everyone, so I wonder why that is. It's certainly not the easiest track in the world, and especially with the Formula 1 car, many possibilities to throw your car into the barriers. So you need to be well prepared, and the qualifying standings show that at least, let's say, the top 10, top 15, I don't really know where you can make the cut. Mainly all the drivers are prepared. I just wonder who's going to take the win today.
Yeah, and for me, the momentum part of the racetrack really is those S's. You approach it in 6th, perhaps 7th gear, got to shift out a couple of times to the first bit, and then it tightens up as you try and turn that car to the right. Really is a difficult corner to handle. I've done 70, 80 laps of this track this week, and it is so difficult, that corner, when it comes down to momentum. We will be bringing you pictures live from Motegi in a couple of minutes' time. You are watching the infamous GlacierTV black screen. Woohoo! On the GlacierTV pre-race show. And that final couple of corners, though, Marius, it's just absolute beauty to drive, but it is so precise and it can go wrong in an instant.
It can really go, but I think with Spa as the launching combo, the launching week here for the series, so many things can go wrong. I think Spa is a pretty good example of that. You've got all kinds of corners where you can just put a car on the grass, put a car on the AstroTurf, collect lots of off tracks, and most of all, when you're under pressure, you can very well just ruin your race by making a slight mistake that could just be enough. So it is a difficult track, yes, definitely, but I think it's a track which you can also master, and by the looks of the qualifying standings, most of the drivers are really well prepared and on for taking the challenge.
Yeah, and we'll be racing for 64 laps today around this racetrack. And when you consider that to Spa last week, yeah, it's about the same distance, but I think one of the unique points of Spa is you've got so much time to breathe and kind of like settle down into a rhythm. Here, you're doing the same thing over and over again. It can get a bit monotonous after a while. And if you're running by yourself, that's kind of when the mistakes start happening, you know? You start thinking, oh, I can take this corner a bit more lackadaisical, and all of a sudden you're off the track. And it's one of those critical factors that these drivers have got to keep that mental and physical stamina all race long. We'll be back in a moment. We will be back after these messages. So round number 5 and 6 of the 2012 Proto Ice $1,000 Cup will be taking place later on this evening. Coverage brought to you by GlacierTV, part of iRacing Super Saturday. That will be taking place from Suzuka. So 2 races in Japan and 1 weekend. Awesome. In the meanwhile, we are now showing you live pictures from Twin Ring Motegi. These guys have got about 3 minutes left of practice to do their final car shakedown. And Marius, it really is going to be a huge, huge race.
It is. I think the Pro Series is shaping up to be one excellent bit of competition. It's very hard to say a series is great just per se. You probably need many elements to do that. It's very significant, though, that especially here, it has shown in Spa already, not just at the middle of the pack. I mean, you always, in any series, at the middle of the pack, there are probably 3 or 4 drivers which also correlate and drive a similar pace. But it's just so significant that also at the very lead of the pack, you cannot afford a single mistake. We've seen that in the DWC, mainly with Hutu versus Lewis. Then it has been 2 people which have been more alien than anyone else, if you will. Then after that, 10 people fighting for the 3rd and 4th spot. Here it is about 6, 7 people fighting for the win, and then another 10 people fighting for the places after that. So it's just a very big mix-up, and one crash ahead could really gift you a couple of positions, and you would still be able to hold these positions because you're running such a similar pace.
The iRacing officials just having a little bit of word of these drivers, reminding them that they have to, after the race, go all the way back into their pit box. One of the rules, a little bit like the Grand Prix World Championship Series and the official Formula 1 series that you see on your television, these drivers have to have enough fuel to get all the way home after the race. Just having a look at PJ Sturgios there, trying to come into pit road, doing himself a practice entry, locking the brakes up. And Marius, you talked about pit entry being difficult here. Really, it's one of the hardest that we'll see all season long, and races can be won or lost there.
It can be, and I think it has been about 2 people in the DWC. It was one of the latest races in the DWC, and drivers, of course, frequently practice the pit entry, but it's just a matter of if you nail it, you gain a second, and if you don't nail it, you lose a bit. But still, running close to someone else, maybe pitting a lap later, you really need to make that lap your best of the race. And once you try to nail the pit entry, clip a wheel on the grass, it's just enough to put the car very much sideways, and you're covered by barriers on the left and tire stacks on the right. So it's just about, if you don't hit anything, you're lucky already. Even if you spin the car, you probably lose several positions, but once it goes wrong, it really goes wrong in that pit road.
I say that these drivers on the qualifying finish, so practice is finished. The next thing, they're going to line up on the grid. We'll run through your final time. The top 10 drivers for this race, it will be Aleski Usiakola bringing in the field when the lights go green. In the first position with David Corps in second, Motegi Filo in third, Richie Stanaway in fourth, Enzo Benito in fifth, Emil Spindell in sixth, Yudan Arumi in seventh, Simon Cattell in eighth, Christian Lorente in ninth, and Paul Ilbrecht in 10th. Marius, final thoughts?
Final thoughts, hoping everything goes clean into the first turn. We've seen a great start by Philo on Spa, so from third position, he's maybe the one to gain a position right away. Nevertheless, Stanaway on 4, looking strong at the start, and also Bonito and Spindle in the third row, looking to gain position or not. It's going to be a very tense start.
Yeah, these drivers last time some of them had difficulties coming to the green flag. Others had a great start. Look out for Philo, look out for Stanaway, look out for Benito. The light going red on the gantry. They'll go red and then they'll go green. We'll be racing for 64 laps at Motegi here today. The lights are on and we're green here at Motegi. A great start for Yakoda to Corn, slow off the line. Philo looking down to the inside into turn number 1, gets plucked off around the outside, 3 wide into turn number 1. Spindell Benito there, and Spindell being pushed down the back straight away. Benito had to check up as they come down into turn number 2. A great start for Yakoda. Philo in second, De Corps in third, Spindell in fourth, Stanaway in fifth. Stanaway up onto his rear. Stanaway is out of the race here early on, and he just gets turned upside down, Marius.
Simon Cattell missing his brake spot there behind Enzo Bonito. Enzo Bonito turning to the left, hitting Simon Cattell, and that is putting Richie Stanaway up and over. And it just looks like his car is severely damaged. Right now he's at the back of the pack, but what a brilliant start apart from that. Philo having a great start once again, second position, and also Spindler came from 6th position here, running in 4th position, and Udaina Rumi came from 7th, and benefiting by that crash is already in 5th.
So it is Aleski Usiakola leading the way as they come down onto the back straightaway for the first time. The Corpse is in the 3rd position. He got passed at the start by Motegi Filo. He's up into the 2nd position. Richie Stanaway, however, is down at the rear of the field after skirting this race from the 4th position. They're coming now down under the tunnel. The oval is above them as they come now down into the final corner to put lap number 1 in the books, but it's a good start for Spindell. He's up into the 4th position. Yudi Narumi, he's up a couple of positions. He will come across the line and take the 5th position here in this race, but that incident with Stanaway, he's just going to be heartbroken there. It's best qualifying of the Pro Series to date, and he is now down at the rear of this field. Out front, however, Yakoda has got himself a 1.3 second gap over DG Filo.
Yeah, and after the great qualifying for Stanaway, this is the one thing he could not afford, and it's just a very early race over for him. Nevertheless, looking through the grid here, once again, great start by Joni Termelek. Came from 21st, now in 14th after 1 lap. Also Jesper Pedersen behind him started in 19th, now in 15th. So lots of people, for example, Fabio Rocamo made up 10 positions, came from 20, now in 10. And it really looks like by that crash you could have made up some positions. Also great start by these guys, of course. But it's a long race, and we've seen a bit of a gap between Spindle and Narumi for 4th. Just after 1 lap, Narumi has closed that gap already, and he's already behind Spindle. Nevertheless, we're on the long straight here, downhill. It's going steep downhill. You need to be close, though. You can't really overtake, you can't really make the draft with being 3 or 4 car lengths behind. You have to be close enough out of the turn, and that just leaves you relying on a mistake by the guy ahead. And if that mistake is not going to come, you will not have many overtaking possibilities. But it looks like the guys just want to break free right now. Fastest lap of the race, Alexius Jakola, 27.2.
Yeah, and Jakola is doing a really good start to this race here at Twin Ring Motegi. That gap is increasing lap on lap early on. And in that second position is Motegi DG Philo, 1.5 seconds down behind the race leader, but with a 7/10 of a second gap over David DeCorp. Imo Spindel is in the 4th position with Yuda Narumi, rounding out your top 5 and Marius. Like we saw last week, these drivers kind of in that 7/10 of a second dirty air just cannot close much further, and these cars are quite separated by about 8 car lengths, 32nd, 2nd, 3rd, 34th, 4th to 5th.
Yeah, and once you're out of the draft, it's very hard to get back into, and once you're in the draft, it's very hard to fall out. So it's quite a difficult science at its own. You really need to make a mistake to lose the draft, and you really need to be pushing all the way and relying on a mistake from your enemies to gain a position. So for Mogafilo, 1.5 seconds behind, that is pretty much the border of losing the draft here. Behind him, David Korb only 7/10 off, and also Emil Spindel just 1 second. Yudai Narumi 7/10, and then it's Enzo Bonito already being 6.2 seconds behind the leader. So he's the first one not having draft from the top 5 pack. And I wonder, together with Simon Cattell, how he's going to plan to get back there. He definitely has the pace. Last lap also 27 for him, but it's going to be a very difficult job for him to get back at the top.
Indeed, and having a look at this battle for 8th all the way down to about 16th position on the racetrack. Diego Afero in the 66 car, playing the role today of Jarno Trulli, Rucusian Lorente behind him in 9th, Fabio De Carmo in 10th, Dave Geelink 11th, Pierre Ubrizzo in 12th, Marcus Gaston 13th, Johnny Tomada in 14th. These drivers all separated by about 0.3 of a second on the racetrack. Tomada is catching this pack, and we talked about how he had a great start, managing to get his way around everything that was going on the racetrack, but now stuck behind this train and not able to improve any further. And confirmation that Richie Stanaway is our first retirement of the race in the 72 car. He started this race now in 4th. He'll be classified in 27th. He will not be looking forward to that later on today. But this battle for 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th really does show how difficult it can be to overtake here. And these drivers are going to have to be bold into one of these big braking zones.
They have to, and taking a look at the lap times of the last time the drivers came by start-finish, and it looks like the top 6 are separating themselves from the rest of the grid once again. So it's quite similar as what we've seen at Spa. Still though, these guys are very similar. 0.3 for Alexius Jakola, 0.1 for Filo, 0.4 for Decorp, 0.4 for Spindle and Narumi, and then Bonito is in the charging position, the charging seat here behind these top 5 with a 27.2, currently the 2nd fastest of the grid. Guys coming by this time for starting the 5th round of the race. David Crow has found some pace, also 0.2 for him, and still Enzo Bonito another 0.2.
Indeed, and out that gap was kind of stabilised, as we saw at Spa-Francorchamps last week. DG Filo about 1.5 seconds behind Yakola. Yakola managing the gap for the time being. If he gets any closer, DG Filo, he will start to catch the draft, catch that slipstream, which will help his top speed into these long straightaways. But Yakola just managing that gap for the time being. His last lap, 1 minute 27.178. You compare that to Filo behind a 1 minute 27.197, so what, 2/100ths of a second between these two drivers, and David Corp's only about 2/100ths of a second slower in 3rd. So these top 3 drivers, mate, is separated by absolutely inches on the racetrack.
Yeah, separated by near nothing, and taking a look at the gap between Bonito and your leader Alexius Jakola, that hasn't been shrinking too much, so at least between Bonito and Usiakola you have not got that much of a difference. Nevertheless, Bonito has been coming closer to Yudai Narumi in the last couple of laps. He's been coming from about 3 seconds down to 2.2 last lap, and that is almost close enough to catching some slipstream. And once Narumi is getting closer to Spindle himself, he's probably ought to lose some time. And with Bonito on the fly here, he's probably able to catch up very quickly.
Yeah, Benito's last lap was 1 minute 27.129. He's being classified as his fastest lap of the race. And Narumi, it was 2 tenths of a second slower that previous lap, and Ignor's Spindle is struggling at the moment. 1 minute 27.526. So Narumi's catching. And so is Benito, so we're going to have ourselves probably a three-way battle for the 4th position. And once that all goes on, as we saw at Spa last week, these top 3 drivers are just going to drive away into the Japanese sunset. Having a look at that gap though between Philo and Yakola, like last time by, it was Philo faster by what, 7/1000th of a second. These drivers are absolutely just running on the ragged edge. But in that pack down the field, this battle for ninth place now, all the way down to about 17th position. People finding it very difficult to overtake in that mid-pack, and you've only got about 2-3 opportunities to do so in this race, and no one is making a move yet down into turn 11.
And we're going to check out what exactly happened with Richie Stanaway at the start. 3rd turn here at Twin-Wing Motegi. He's been hit by none less than Simon Cattell here, missing his brake spot and also being slightly surprised by Enzo Bonito. Surprisingly, Bonito and Cattell not suffering any damage, and pretty much this ended the race for Richie Stanaway. Very unlucky for Stanaway, and we're just going to take a look at what happened here right after the start.
Yeah, and indeed, as you saw Stanaway, he got himself a bit of a sluggish start there. That put him on the back foot as they came down into turn number 1. And it just looked as though it was Stanaway didn't really do anything wrong. But you go into the brakes and to turn number 2, you know, you've not approached turn 1 at full speed. Your brakes aren't as warm as you want them to be. You get onto the brakes for turn number 2, and if you haven't got the brake temperature, you're going to go straight on. And it just looks as though one of those drivers just seemed they didn't want to brake. The car didn't want to brake on them. And it's disappointing for Stanaway. Not the sort of thing that we want to see. But brake temperature on these starts really always is important, Marius. And having a look through the field, though, I have to say that Marcus Caton is putting the pressure on Dave Geeling.
He is. He's really starting to, and that's a good example of the midway pack. He's been followed by Pierre Ubitsu and Joni Termele, as well as Jesper Pedersen for the last couple of laps. A little bit of a mistake by Termele, a little bit of a mistake by Ubitsu, and the draft is quickly lost. And now it's Geeling versus Caton fighting for the 11th position here. And yeah, it looks like they still maintain the draft to Carmore in 10th.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. It looks so that they're having close battles on the racetrack, but again, no one's having the chance to really try and make the move to overtake, and Caton's doing a good job. He's getting very close to come out the final corner once again, to close up to the rear of Dave Geeling. But through the field for the moment, it looks like everyone's got themselves a little bit of separation on the racetrack. That gap between Yakola and Fido in the battle for the race lead is kind of growing by a couple of tenths per second this past couple of laps. The core is still about a second behind Philo, so he's kind of there, still using that toe, but not really getting the effects of the dirty air just yet. But those top 3 drivers, Bindell now is being caught by Narumi. He's only 4 tenths of a second behind in that battle for the 4th position. And Benito, he's kind of slowed down a little bit ever since he's caught that dirty air as well in 6th spot. And it looks like Benito is struggling as they go through the S's. And Marius, that's where you really need to have the aerodynamic grip as you go through those 2 corners.
Yeah, and I'm taking a look at the times of Bonito. He seems very fast. He's not exactly off the lead at times here. So it's very hard to predict what strategy he's on. Nevertheless, in his role, it would of course be best to either pit earlier to avoid the dirty air, or pit later to really put in one fast lap and then leapfrog your enemies. It's very hard to predict though, just like we've had it on Spa. We've been seeing that after the first pit stop, it was a bit more clear to see what has happened. And I think it's just going to be a matter of 1 lap of a difference. The cars are running so similar times here. Can't imagine the guys running severely different strategies. Nevertheless, we've also talked about that in the pre-race broadcast. It could just be that very 1 lap to be enough to alter your spot by 1 or 2 positions. I mean, we see Enzo Bonito's just 1 second behind. It's 1 second lost or gained on the pit entry alone. So it might just be that what you're hoping for.
And we're already talking about pit stops, but that entry into pit road is so treacherous. You don't really want to come in with 4 or 5 other cars simultaneously, because it's going to be amazingly difficult to hit your marks and gain some time. So if you can put an extra couple of laps of fuel in and stick with these other guys, then perhaps you could be on the driver's seat. But some drivers, I expect maybe 1 or 2 drivers perhaps try and pit maybe a lap earlier, just so they can get that clear entry into pit road, because unlike Spa one, it's a pretty easy pit entry in, and you're talking about the tyres and the grip after pit stops. Here, I really do think it is that pit entry that's going to make the difference.
Bonito now fully caught up to the pack, fighting for the 4th position, and nevertheless at the top of the field. Nothing changed, so Alexio Siakola still your race leader, coming down the finish line, this time starting his 10th lap of the day, 10th of 64, so a long way to go for Usiakola. Philho in 2nd. This time I think he's been the one at Spa. He's been looking for getting Usiakola. He's just been looking for getting him. He's not getting closer, and he couldn't get him. So he's in the same spot this time. Davide Korb right behind him, also looking to get him. So I think Philo has something out of the bag, and you said about the pit entry. We're expecting the first pit stops to happen somewhat around lap 20, and you really have to nail not only your pit stop, so you stand still where you can tend to lose half a second easily. You also have to nail the pit entry, and if that happens to one of the top 3 in this kind of gap, it's easily a leapfrog.
Indeed, yeah, and I know that DG Filo, Yakola, the Corps will all be having that on their mind. They'll be doing 2 pit stops here today, and it's something they've really got to pay attention to. So to run through your top 5 with 9 laps now scored complete here in round number 2 of the iRacing.com Road Pro Series. It is Alexio Siakola leading the way in the 54 car. That gap is down now to 1.3 seconds between himself and Modcar DG Filo in the 62 car. David Corps is in the 3rd position with Amos Linnell at 4. Yudin Arumi rounding out your top 5. Enzo Benito, he's caught up to that battle for the 4th position. He is in 6th. Simon Cattell running by himself in 7th. Thiago Ferrer in 8th. Christian Lorente in 9th. And Fabio De Carlo is rounding out your top 10. And really, it looks as though up front it is going to be a battle between Dracula and DG Filo.
Yeah, it's shaping up like that. A few laps ago, Emil Spindle has still been in the reach of the top 3. Now he's already down 6 seconds. If you remember, that has been what Enzo Bonito has been down a couple of laps ago. So Bonito now in 6th, following the top 4, a little bit closer than he was before. Still not very enough to be as close as Yudai Narumi, so directly following in the slipstream the entire lap. It's really like you said, the top 3 are shaping up to be one battle. Davide Korb is gaining a bit on Philo there, and the 3 around place 4 are shaping up to be one battle, and then it's already about 4 seconds to Simon Cattell in 7th. So 2 times 3-way battles here, and 1 time for the lead and 1's for 4th.
And having a look at the lap times for Cattell, I'm not sure whether or not he's struggling with any damage from the start of this race. I'm having a look at the front of his car, and it all looks like everything's pointing in the same direction, but Cattell's looking a little bit off the pace for the time being. He set his fastest lap that previous circuit around the racetrack at 1 minute 27.218, but apart from that, his lap times have been pretty off. He's been doing 1 minute 27.8, 1 minute 27.7, not the sort of speed we were expecting there from Cattell in the 57 car.
Yeah, it's car made of solid steel, I guess. He's running comfortable though. Orfao behind him in 8th, about 3.8 seconds down, and to the front he's also got more than 4. So it's really just Cattell doing his own race. He still sees the cars ahead, which is, like we've said on Spa, a very important feature. You need to see the cars, you need to see where you're going at, and you need to see how the gap develops. And with Nito maybe making a little bit of a mistake there, it could just be Cattell gaining and then profiting from that.
Don't forget, you can keep in contact with us all race long. Use the hashtag IRRoadPro. That is IRRoadPro. We'll be reading out some of the best tweets throughout the race here today. Benito looks as though he catches up to the rear of the 2 drivers ahead of him. That is Narumi in the 5th position, Spindle in 4th. But then he loses it all down in sector 2. As soon as he gets out of the stop-start bit and has to use the aerodynamic momentum, he just looks as though he's struggling a little bit at that position of the racetrack, and that's going to hurt him, trying to set himself up to make a pass towards the end of this lap. But Benito, he could just be biding his time, biding his tyres. We did see at Spa last week a couple of drivers taking it easy at the start of the run to really capitalise later on. Perhaps Benito could just be keeping it cool for the time being, because his lap times have dropped off by about 2 tenths per second from what we saw early on in this race. His fastest lap was 1 minute 27.0, last time by 1 minute 27.3.
Yeah, and I'm taking a look at Enzo Bonito. I mean, after all, the Italian known for a bit of a hot temperament there, not particularly very aggressive, but still a straightforward driver, so he's not giving away these chances easily. I don't think he's taken it too easily, so he's still within 1 second to the front. It could just be right that he's just following, he's observing and taking a look at where this goes, and taking a look at the three-way battle for 4th position. They are losing time after time. It really looks like Spindle is slowing them down. Last lap 26.9, once again a tenth slower than the guys ahead, of course forcing Narumi and Bonito to go slower as well. So it could just be Spindle slowing them down enough to make this a three-way battle all the race long, and Cattell running similar times than them. He's not really gaining, so it looks like this is really fixing up, and with Usiakola at the top of the grid, he's been about 1.5 seconds ahead in lap 2, lap 3, and he's just 1.9 ahead right now. So imagine that over 10 laps, just a gain of about 3 tenths, how hard that is, and it's just so easily lost with one slight mistake.
And checking in on Marcus Caton in the 64 machine, he is set in the 12th position, really now looking racy behind Dave Geelink in the 11th spot and Fabio Di Carmo, who is your 10th place driver. And you see that Caton losing a little bit as they go down the straightaway. We're on board of him now as they come down into turn number 11, this late braking zone. Seems to be when you brake downhill, these cars can go so late into the apexes, they'll all flick it to the right a little bit as they go down into the final 2 corners, hugging the curbs nicely left for Caton, but he's now setting himself up. That's as close as he's been all race long. You see defensive driving there from Geelink ahead of him, but Caton is going to look down to the inside into turn number 1, not quite close enough, but he could try and do the same thing again as they come out of the corner. Not as close this time by, but Caton really is looking racy now in that 12th position, Marius.
Yeah, and as well in this battle, it looks like Fabio Di Carmo is the slowest of all here. In 10th position, he's had a great start, like we said before, came from 20th. So he's running 27 high at the moment, and even the guys ahead are running mid 27, so he's probably holding them up a little bit. I think Geelink and Ketten could go faster. Nevertheless, for the guys behind them, Urbitsu, Termel, and also Peterson, who is a bit behind, it might be the thing they are looking for, because as long as they are being held up, they still maintain the chance of benefiting from a slight mistake ahead. And once it comes to the pit stops, they have a bit of a frame to develop their strategy in. So Termel in 14, Peterson in 15, and also Lovett in 16 are the ones looking for a leapfrog under the first pit stop here. And
Caton looks like he's a lot faster in sector 2, but they can't get the momentum out of turn number 10 as they come over the crest down into turn 11 to set up a pass there. But he's so quick in those final couple of corners. He closed last time right onto the rear of Geelink, who's having a bit of trouble sat behind Fabio Di Carmo. Carmo's not that fast on the racetrack at the moment, sat in that 10th position. So perhaps a rabbit in a hole, as someone on Twitter said there, for Di Carmo for the time being in that 17 machine. Caton a little bit further back this time by, not quite close enough to make the pass happen, but we'll keep an eye on this battle for 10th, 11th and 12th positions on the racetrack. A little bit ahead of them, you've got Christian Lorente trying to close up to the rear of Thiago Alfaro in the battle for the 8th position. Lorente's last lap, 1 minute 27.679. Alfaro is pulling away a little bit now, though, Marius, and a good drive so far for the 66 car. Indeed, sorry, it looks as I've just lost Marius for a moment there.
No, you haven't lost me. I'm just observing. Just like I did on Spa. It's all kinds of battles at every end of the track. I mean, top 10, basically the battle starts with Fabio Di Carmo and it ends all the way down nearly in place 20 already. So Xavier Bussons, Miguel Martin, Ryan Terpstra, they all not have been that particularly fast, but due to the guys ahead being held up, they catch up quickly. So it could just be them also leapfrogging. I mean, for the top 3, we know what the situation is. We see Alexi Usiakola stretching the battle and stretching the lead, especially up to 2.2 seconds this time by. But with Spindle losing time to the guys ahead and Narumi and Bonito following, it's pretty much the same from the start of the race. So from place 10 on, we've got so much battles, but we just see how hard it really is to overtake. Catton had the chance 2 laps ago, but he could not just make it last until the first turn. And yeah, you really need to have the help from the guy ahead. Maybe this time, no, it's just not enough for Catton to overtake Geeling here.
Having a look at that battle once again for first and second positions on the racetrack, it looks as though Yakola starting to lose a little bit of time now to Motegi Philo. And Philo last time set a 1 minute 26.942. Yakola a 1 minute 27.0. I mean, Yakola had some blistering laps, 1 minute 26.6s. Compare that to Philo's fast lap of 1 minute 26.7. But Philo looks as though once he gets to that 2-second gap, he can close it all the way back down to about a second. Then it kind of stagnates itself up again. But Philo looking as though he's trying to mount a charge in that 62 Radicals machine, but it is Yakola ahead of him there, just pushing away in that race lead. And that 54 car hasn't put a foot wrong all season long to date.
Yeah, and it's still about 5 laps to go until the first pit stops of the race here. Yakola posting a 26.7, and it looks like Philo has really found the zone yet. He's gained 1/10 in the last 2 laps. Of course, he's also lost a bit, so he's crossed the 2-second mark. Still though, Philo being the fastest driver in the field right now, the Brazilian in 2nd position here, struggling to keep the car yeah, in the same kind of gap range. He's always gaining a bit, he's always losing a bit, so around 2 seconds is what he's at right now, and that could just be enough to get Usiakola a bit of a breathing space at the pit stop.
I have to say, Narumi in that 76 car had the biggest wiggle I've seen all race long in his kind of carrot orange and green Nexus Esports car. He had a huge wiggle coming out the final corner. That dropped him back dramatically from the rear of Emma Bindel in the 33 car. Also, Jason Lovatt passes Jesper Pedersen in the battle for the 15th position to move Lovatt up now into the 14th spot. Into the 15th spot, Pedersen down into 16th, and Lovatt now trying to catch Jonas Hamala in the 77 car. And having a look, say we're approaching that first swing for pit stops, Marius. We're about, what, 4 or 5 laps away? You have a look there, that kind of like Tormala, Abitso, Caton, Geeling, DeCarmo kind of train. These drivers, so they all come into pit road at the same time. It's going to be tremendously difficult for them all to make it. Are you expecting 1 or 2 of these drivers to try and perhaps stretch it to 1 lap longer?
It really depends on the fuel. I mean, you could just be planning to go 1 lap longer right now, but then realize the guys come in early, as does Marcus Catton. He's the one first down the pit road here, and looking at the rear of the car, it doesn't look like someone's following him. So Catton being stuck behind Dave Geeling, the first one down pit road, and lap 17 that is incredibly early. If he wants to stretch that over a 2-stop, it could just be on the very limit here. So Catton definitely going for the early stop, being held up, but I wonder if that's not too early. I mean, he's out with cold tires now, he's out with a lot of fuel now, so even if he makes the stretch and goes with a blistering set of lap times, Geeling might just pit in about 4 laps. Then I wonder if this is the right decision. Hard to say.
Well, yeah, he could stretch out that difference over the course of this run and the next one, but for Catton, it's a big risk early on. We saw last week at Spa, some of these drivers that pitted early, it didn't work out for them. You know, there's a fine line between what is a good strategy and a bad one. Catton throwing the dice there in the 64 car. We'll keep an eye on his progress. He is falling back now down into the 25th position on the racetrack. So he's only got Xavier Bussoms behind him. But importantly, he's got himself a couple of seconds of clean air before he catches up Wes Richard in the 43 car, and Richard's been so off the pace here today. 1 minute 28 his lap times, compare that to Catton's 1 minute 27, that he should, Marius, be able to breathe past Richards, and then he's got himself another bit of clean track ahead.
He should, but yeah, it's also a question of when Wes Richards comes down pit road here, so he could just have a free track, this time by no one else in pit road, so it really looks like Catton is on an extraordinary strategy here. Taking a look at the gap between Philo and Usiakola, it looks like pushing the car in the beginning of the race, Usiakola has pretty much destroyed his tires a little bit. So Filho gaining 2/10 in the last 2 laps, so he's down from 2.1 to 1.7 seconds. And imagining the pit stop coming up in the next 2 or 3 laps, this is not what Alexio Siakola in the lead needs. Filho coming down now, and a driver being within seconds right behind you. Like we said, this slight mistake down pit road could just be enough to cost you the lead here. So Alexio Siakola not making any actions to move down pit road, as well as Mogafilo staying out, and also Davide Korb in third. Not really talk much about him, 3.6 seconds down the lead, not coming down, and also from the battle behind them, no one really is. So lap 20 commencing, no one of the leaders coming down pit road.
Yeah, and you'll see that as soon as one of these cars come down, they're all kind of like sheep, parrots, whatever you want to call them, and they'll all kind of come down together. They don't want to be the driver that stays out for too long and ends up losing all of these positions. Of course, yes, you're carrying more fuel, but these tyres, you put some new ones on, you're going to have a little bit of advantage for those first couple of laps, and that could be what makes up the difference. Yakola, the gap is now 1.6 seconds between himself and Modka DG Filo. In the battle for the first position is David Corbs in third. We haven't, as I say, talked much about him. Teammate Yakola, but running in that 58 car nicely solidly, 3.6 seconds behind the race lead. His fastest lap of the race actually came that last time by a 1 minute 26.589. One of the fastest laps we've actually had all race long. In fact, it's faster than Yakola's, but Filo just set the fastest lap at the same time, 1 minute 26.494. Filo, for the moment, really is on the charge. So working on lap number 20, 20 laps is going to be complete out on the line. We'll keep an eye on pit road, seeing whether or not Yakola comes down this time by. He indeed does not. He stays out. Filo stays out. The corpse looks like he is staying out as well. So these guys are trying to make it so they put as much even fuel as they can over their 2 pit stops in this race. Narumi is in the 5th position. Benito is in 6th. Cattell in 7th. Thiago Ferrer in 8th. None of these drivers have come down pit road yet. And Christian Lorente in 9th, and Fabio De Carmo is running out your top 10. None of the top 10 drivers have pitted. It's always scary though, mate, because you're looking as though they're going to come into pit road and then they just sweep it to the left into the penultimate corner.
Yeah, and if you want to react then, well, talking about that pit entry in particular, you might not want to react too late. Coming down pit road, just being a bit too late could just end your race right away. Nevertheless, lap 21 right now. This is the frame where we'd expect the first guys to pit. Taking a look at the lap times now, tires being at the end. Usiakola has found some pace again, so he stretched the gap and held it at 1.8 seconds right there. Taking a look at Spindle, Narumi and Bonito. They are all quite a bit down the leaders, so Usiakola running in the mid-26s, David Korb being the slowest one of them, 26.7, and still Spindle, Narumi and Bonito all running high 26s or low 27s. So even Simon Cattell behind them, not exactly closing the gap, but also holding it in the 3.5 second range. Also he's running 27 low. It just looks like the runners at the top have seemed to conserve the tires a little bit more than them. And I expect Spindle, Narumi and Bonito coming down a bit earlier down pit road. Of course, you can't really afford to make an early stop here. If you want to make the late one to leapfrog and you're running out of fuel, you've basically gained nothing. So, well, it's going to be a hard decision of when to pit.
Yeah, we expect them to come down pit road soon, however. We're currently now working on lap number 22 of 64, so we are pretty much at 1/3 distance now in this race. Yakola is still leading the way. The gap is now up to 2.2 seconds to DG Filo. But it is going to be a case these drivers, we expect them to come down pit road in the next couple of laps time. They're now at that point where they can just take pretty much 2 equal fuel loads to complete the race here. And I think, though, having a look down the pit stops, I expect for Fares to be really good on pit road. I saw him early on a week. He was very good on pit road. Narumi's always been good at pitting. Spindell, you know, these drivers could not necessarily gain positions, but they need to have good pit stops just to kind of keep their momentum and keep their own position on the racetrack, because these gaps are so close. You know, you look between 3rd and 4th, so 4th and 5th, 5th and 6th, 6th and 7th. They're all very closely separated on the racetrack, so one little mistake is going to be the big difference there. as Yakoda looking once again as though he's going to come down pit road. But Philo does come down pit road. So Philo, the first to blink here in this race, he's going to give up second position to Davide Corpse. Philo bringing it down to 37 miles an hour. It is so slow down this pit road.
And Spindle stays out. Spindle stays out, and Narumi having a bit of a struggle in the pit road there. Spindle, De Corp, Usiakola staying out here. I think Spindle has been he's been hesitating. He's been almost making the move down pit road. Then he saw that the guys behind him are pitting probably, and he just made it stick for one lap. Hopefully he has enough fuel to do that. Spindle nevertheless has to be fully on risk right now. It looks like Philo gets a clean exit, so no lap cars, no cars still fighting for places around him. Yudai Narumi coming out, and also Enzo Bonito leaving the pits right now, and Ryan Terpstra comes by, and that is exactly in front of Bonito and Paul Ilbrink after Bonito. So Bonito being sandwiched by Terpstra and Ilbrink right now, and that is exactly what he didn't need.
Indeed, no, and you want to make sure not only you come out in getting a good pit stop, you don't come out into traffic, because you come out into traffic, these cars, you know, are on lighter fuel, they've got worse tyres, it's going to make it difficult for you to pass, and you're losing all of that additional momentum that you would have wanted to getting into your pit stop. Having a look at Yakoda coming down into turn number 11 once again. We'll see whether he makes that journey onto pit road this time by. He's got a lap traffic ahead of him, and indeed this time he does come onto pit road. He flicks it to the right, then onto the left. These drivers have got to be so careful on pit entry. Now you see they tighten up pit entry just a little bit. They'll run down, make the journey as short as possible. Behind De Course also comes in. Spindell comes in. We'll keep an eye to see whether Cattell comes in this time by as well. We expect him to do so. No, he doesn't. He stays out. So he will inherit the race lead for the time being. Yakoda is into his pit stop. He's going to get 4 fresh tyres. He's going to top himself up with fuel. And you can see there behind him, David De Course into his pit box as well. And Yakoda is out. We'll keep an eye to see where Philo is going to be on the racetrack. And it looks as though he is going to keep the race lead there. And also actually bring the gap up quite a bit. Philo must have had a bad pit stop because Yakoda blistering on pit road. The Corp comes out and he's actually a little bit closer to Philo than when he came in.
I've been following the battle around 3rd, 4th position here. Yudai Narumi has been in the pit 1 lap ago, as well as Enzo Bonito, and with the brilliant lap and no traffic, Emil Spindle maintains the currently 6th position as we haven't had Cattell and Orfao in the pits. So it looked like the Corp is, well, I wouldn't exactly say much closer, but it could just be that tiny bit to get draft. Brilliant pit stop, however, from Alexiou Siakola, and from the top 6, I think, apart from Enzo Bonito, who's been stuck a little bit in the traffic. It's only been Moga Philo who's been having a struggle on the pit road, so he's about, yeah, twice as much the gap as before the pit stop. Just a little bit under that, maybe. And now Alexiou Siakola also running behind Thiago Orfao might benefit Philo a little bit right away, but with Davide Corp closely behind him and maybe closing in a couple of laps coming up now, this will be a very hard middle stint for all of them once again. Yeah, but I tell you what, Katana's been able to get past Gieling. He is right up to it now behind the rear of Christian Lorente by the look of it. So Katana's managed to gain a position on these pit stops. But we've seen how good a driver Lorente can be. He's driving in the Nexus Esports number 68 car. Caton, though, looking as though he's got himself a chance now to fight for the top 10 positions. It looks as though Timo Evenen hasn't yet pitted. He's now coming down pit road himself in the 59 car. So he was running in 10th position for a brief moment. But it is Thiago Ferro up front. And he looks as though he's going a lot longer than all of these other drivers. Yeah, the 25th lap for him right now. For making it a 1 stop, which is very unlikely, he has to put it to lap at least about lap 30 here. So 5 more laps to go for him then. Still, it's I think it's good to run a fast and long first stint. So we've seen Orfao fighting with Christian Lorente almost the entire race so far. He's only running 27.5 right now, and he has been in the 0.3s and 0.4s. So this doesn't seem particularly slow stage of the race, but he's not exactly running on the peak of the tires anymore. So expecting Thiago Orfao to pit in this lap, lap 25, of course, making it a shorter 2nd and 3rd stint. And with less fuel and less time at the pit stop, it could just be that very bit which gets Orfao off the front of Christian Lorente. So with Lorente pushing, and yes, Orfao comes down the pit road. Orfao made a brilliant stop with the heavier car and the more worn tires, to make this last, and now he's down pit road, and Christian Lorente in 9th, coming down the long straight right now, and I'm pretty sure he's going to extend the gap.
Yes, Santiago Ferro hits from what was the race lead. He is going to take himself 4 tyres. He's going to top up with fuel, but he'll take less fuel than all these other drivers by doing a longer pit stop. So he was off pace a little bit at the start of the race. That perhaps was the reason why. We're keeping an eye out on Christian Lorente. He's coming out of the final corner. It looks like Ferro is going to come out in the 8th position with Lorente in 9th. Marcus Caton rounding out your top 10. So it paid off perhaps there for Thiago Ferro in the 66 car. He is now in the 8th position, and he's got himself actually a good couple of seconds gap, about 3 seconds gap over Christian Lorente in the 68 car. Timo Evening was able to make a jump on a couple of drivers as well by staying out a little bit longer. So it looks as though it worked out for a couple of these drivers, but Evening lost out a couple of positions on that last lap.
Yeah, and I'm very surprised about Marcus Caton actually. He's been in that battle as well, but he's been a bit further down. Now he's in 10th position, right behind Christian Lorente, and remember he's been in the pits in lap 17-18. So he's out for a mere 8 laps right now, and it doesn't look like he's much heavier than at least Christian Lorente ahead of him, because he's really setting him under some pressure right now. Nevertheless, Caton making the first stop so early will have 2 relatively long stops coming ahead. If this one isn't the long one, he has to put the car longer in the pit stall for the last pit stop here. So even if he makes this last, even if he gets Christian Lorente, he has to build a gap to make it last for the last pit stop.
Yeah, and I tell you what, that is going to be one of the better battles for this second part of the race. Caton is so close, they come down, sweeping its left-hand side, now down into that final chicane here. Caton is trying to battle Lorente for the battle for the 9th position. If Caton can find his way past, I have no doubt in my mind that he can try and close up to the rear of Thiago Ferro in the 66 car, but Caton looks as though he's been struggling when he's behind other drivers. And if I was him, I would have taken perhaps maybe a half click of front wing on that car, but he looks as though he's really good in that final sector, but struggling a little bit here in the slow speed corners of sector 1.
Yeah, and I've been looking at the pit road and the general time gain, time loss thing. Fabio De Carmo, he has been in 10th. He's made a brilliant first stint here, coming from place 20. Once again, you can't say that too often. Nevertheless, he is down to 14th position here, as well as Piero Abizzo is in 15th. So together with Dave Geerling, Joni Termele, Xavier Bussoms and Marcus Caton have made up lots of positions and lots of time here and lots of ground. Termele in 12, Bussoms in 11 and Caton in 10. So Termele being a bit off there, still in the reach for Geerling and Do Carmo. But yeah, Xavier Bussoms with a great pit stop apparently, right at the tail of Marcus Caton for place 10.
Indeed, yeah, and it looks as though that is going to be the battle on the racetrack for the mid-portion of this race. As he goes wide, Caton's going to find his way past, and Lorente there on the grass, and it all went horribly wrong for him. Down into turn number 11. He just got himself a little bit too hot on the brakes, caught the curb on the way in. You don't want to run that curb when you're putting yourself down the brakes. The tyres just lock up on you. And you see there, Caton is through, and I believe also Xavier Bussoms is through as well. So, move Lorente down now into the 11th position.
Oh, and Bussoms almost off. Bussoms almost off, and that puts Lorente right behind him once again. And I wonder if this is just a question of concentration right now. The race is almost halfway over, and remembering this as one of the longest races in the DWC, we're only 40 minutes into the race, and imagine that, not even halfway over. So we're looking for a 1.5 hour plus race here, one of the longest ones of the series here. If your concentration issues are kicking in right now, you're gonna be in for a surprise for the next 34 laps. And with Bussoms running a bit wide there out of the second turn, just puts Lorente right behind him, and I think Caton was right prepared for yeah, yet another battle with another car though. Bussoms replacing Lorente in the 11th position, but with Caton being quite strong, let's say, quite safe there, not really making much mistakes, this is probably what he needs if he's on a longer middle stint.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Christian Lorente, that last lap as well, he went very aggressive into the sweeping S-bend and almost dumped the car there as well. Lorente is trying to push himself to get back up to the rear of Busan in the 69 car, but is struggling as they do so. And Motegi gets a little bit squirrely coming out of the final corner as well. So it is now Caton up into the 9th position. We're going to keep an eye on his lap time to see what he's doing in relation to Thiago Alfaro ahead of him. Caton's last lap was a 1 minute 26.9. Compare that to Alfaro, which was a 1 minute 27.4. Caton is closing at the moment at half a second a lap. And it's not going to be long before he gets up to the rear of Alfaro in the 66 car. To run through your top 10 drivers with 28 laps scored complete here, it is Alessi Acola leading the way in the 54 car. Motegi Filo is now 3.1 seconds behind, with David Corliss a further 1 second back. Emil Spindel in the 33 car is in 4th position, with Yudai Narumi in the 5th spot, Enzo Benito in 6th, Simon Cattell in 7th, Thiago Ferrer in 8th. Caton, we just talked about him, he's now up into the 9th position, and Xavier Busson is rounding out your top 10. But Lorente, it just went all wrong for him there, and you can tell as well, it's not just the mental stamina these drivers need, it's that ability to pick up the pieces after you make a, one simple mistake, and Lorente, he almost stumped it twice in that lap afterwards.
Yeah, and take a look at the general gap between cars, especially at the front. I mean, it was clear after a few laps already that Spindel wouldn't be able to go the pace of the top 3 here. But meanwhile, Spindel has extended his gap to about 2 seconds, and it looks like Bonito has made a little mistake in the last laps. Coming out of pit road, he's not exactly picking the pace up, so looks also Spindel is together with Narumi on a shorter middle stint here, putting in blazing lap times of 26 is quite high. So Spindel in 4th, Yudai Narumi in 5th, separated by mere 2 seconds. Then Bonito in 6th, and he's already down by about 5.5. That would be for 4th positions in the last stint. Yeah, they've separated a little bit. Nevertheless, Usiakola leading by only 3 seconds, so after the little issue on the pit stop, on the pit road, Philo doesn't seem to be bothered. He's still on the same pace than Jakola, and even with the Corp only 1.2 seconds behind him, he is able to put down blistering lap times. He's currently the fastest in the grid. In the top 3, nothing is decided.
Indeed, nothing ever is decided in these races. As we just saw with Lorente, you just spin it in one corner and all of a sudden you lose yourself a good couple of positions and also perhaps a couple of places. Last time by, DG Philo is actually faster once again than UC Acola ahead of him. So, I mean, Philo's last lap was a 1 minute 26.6. Compare that to the 1 minute 26.8 for Yakola. But we can talk about how Philo can close this gap. But we've always seen that Yakola has been the best at managing races from the front. And that's all he needs to do. He's got a 2.8 second gap. There's no need for him to push too hard. Is there any point in him having to worry about that car behind him that much?
It's hard to say. It's always a point worrying about the car right behind you, of course, but it really just depends on the gap. And yeah, the cars still have to bring this Formula 1 car down the pit road once again. And when it comes to that point, it's once again the point of making a mistake. And for example, Philo making a slower pit stop last time, it could just be Usiakola doing a new slowest pit stop of them all. So 2.8 seconds this time by between Philo and Jakola, and it's just not enough for being really relaxed at the top for all of them.
Indeed, Jakola is just driving a beautiful race out front, however. I mean, his lap times have been so consistent, and you just see as the fuel burns off, his lap times come down. I mean, that last lap was a little bit more scrappy, it was about a 10th off where he should have been, but still, as he comes past the line once again, it's another 1 minute 26.8. Compare that to Philo's 1 minute 26.6. Philo is on the charge. There's no doubt about that. And you can compare Yakola's first stint, however, to his second stint. He's kind of doing the times that Philo was doing on his first stint, Philo's doing now. So it's not as if Yakola hasn't got the pace. Perhaps he is just, easing it back a little bit, managing that gap. It's now 2.6 seconds on the racetrack between himself and Philo. But the important thing is that Philo's now built up a 1.5 second gap to David Corbs in third. Again, we haven't talked about the Corbs that much. He's been kind of there, sitting down patiently, waiting to see whether Philo would make a mistake ahead. But the Corbs doesn't look as though he's got the speed, really, to close up to the rear of Philo ahead of him.
Yeah, and it's been the same in the bar race. David Corb being a really passive driver, not really catching our attention with anything, being of course a positive fact. Nevertheless, we've talked about the zone where you kind of get more error loss, more dirty air, and I think David Corb is just he's caught in the middle of that 1.5 seconds, it's still enough to make your car go wide and understeer on the fast turns, and it's going to be harder than cracking a coconut for him to close in more. And I mean, 1 seconds is good, and as well for Philo 2.6 seconds is good, but closing in any more than 1.5 is just a really hard thing to do.
And I want to go back to that kind of mental stamina thing as well. And we've seen a couple of drivers, you know, half the race done, and they're already struggling. In fact, we are now at half race distance here in round number 2 of the iRacing.com at Pro Series of Road Racing from Twin Ring Motegi. And I mean, these drivers, you know, they spend what, an hour and a half in this car. They do hours and hours of practice. It's almost like, you know, to prepare for it, you've got to really get your physical stamina up. You've got to get that mental stamina up. Get rid of everything else going on around you. You might as well just put a hairdryer on and play the noise for an hour and a half, because it's like the sound of engine noise you're going to get from the engine. But for these drivers, it looks as though, you know, they are prepared for these long races, and not really that many mistakes. But still, only the one retirement, and that is Richie Stanaway respectively.
Yeah, Stanaway the only very unlucky person, and not really discrediting the drivers here, but I think we're halfway down the race. Lap 33 actually crossed the halfway mark 1 lap ago. I've expected more drivers to make mistakes here, and so far, excluding the little mistakes we've seen, no real mistake at all. And just taking a look at what's going on the track, 10th position, Xavier Bussoms brought the car down pit road for a second time here. Of course, he's been one of the earliest cars to pit here, even earlier than Marcus Catton in lap 16. So he seems to be virtually the only one on the 3-stop strategy. Not really sure if Catton is, because he's still out on track, but I wonder if that is really the strategy you want to use. He's not particularly lost much, but he's not really that much faster than the other cars. He's not fast enough to gain the time he needs, and now he's once again stuck in traffic.
Yeah, I'm having a look at this battle for 13th, 14th position on the racetrack. Having a look at Fabio Di Carmo in the 17 machine. He's got Pierre Abrizzo right behind him as they come down that long back straightaway where we once again. Jason Lovett is trying to close the gap a little bit. Lovett's last lap time of 1:28.1. Compare that to the cars ahead of him. He's kind of on the same pace, but Lovett not really being able to pull that gap too much. But Abrizzo is looking very close to the rear of Fabio Di Carmo as they come now down into the final couple of corners once again to put their 33rd lap in the books. And Abrizzo is getting a great run out of the final corner. He's going to try and look down to the inside using that slipstream to its full momentum. He's going to look down to the inside into turn number 1. He will complete the pass there and beautifully dove into that corner, and that was commitment there for Abrizzo, because I think if Di Carmo made it hard for him, both of those drivers could have been off the racetrack. But Abrizzo is now up into the 13th position, Fabio Di Carmo down into 14th.
Yeah, and he's really need that. Fabio Di Carmo seems to be struggling in the middle stint here, and just being passed by that, Abrizzo will be able to hopefully break free a bit. And of course, Jason Lovett in 15th, looking towards gaining time on them. Lovett, of course, known as one of the more experienced drivers here, also driven in the DWC last year. So he's not one of the ones which know Motegi a lot more than the others, despite this track being very new. Nevertheless, he's maybe the one, if you have him right behind you, you're going to be looking for a pass relatively soon.
So we have passed half race distance here at Twin Ring Motegi. It is still Alessio Giacola leading the way. The gap is 2.6 seconds. He's picked up the pace those last couple of laps. Has Giacola. DG Philo in the 2nd position, a 10th of a second slower that last time by, but he's still managing that gap to David DeCourse in the 58 car. DeCourse has been able to kind of get to that 1.5 second gap once again, but it looks as though as soon as he gets there, he is struggling just a little bit in that 58 car. It is interesting though to see how Narumi is doing behind Spindell. It's difficult for Narumi to close up in that battle for the 4th position, and it's been very difficult for him, but yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say. He has been looking a little bit faster than Emil Spindel in the first stint, so his car just seems to be running like on skis. He's very forward out of these turns. He's not really getting a lot of oversteer, so he seems to have just put these racing goggles on and tried to race Emil Spindel, but it's just the same again. He's within 1 second and he's not closing in a lot more, so he seems to be relatively stuck. And yeah, it's the main difference between this and the first stint is, of course, that Enzo Bonito is now just about 9 seconds down. So he's just been losing time after time, and he's probably fueled the car nearly to the max by the looking at these lap times. And yeah, he's just losing a lot there. He can't really keep up.
I have to say though, a couple of people who are going to be very happy, the iRacing officials. Once again, we've had ourselves to date a very clean race. Yes, there was that incident, Richie Stanaway, on lap number 1, but you know the guys, Shannon Whitmore and Imcross Jr., the guys who run all the competition edge of these things, they're going to be very pleased. They haven't got much paperwork to fill out after this race. And the thing is, Marius, you know, they're not running this series like Communist China. They do let these guys have at it, but it's been perfectly clean racing all season long to date. And this is what this series really needed, is for these guys, you know, just let their on-track activities do the talking and not get in each other's way too much.
Yeah, and I'm very surprised about how clean it actually is. Wes Richards going to be lapped by your leader Alexei Usiakola, this time by probably lap 36 for Usiakola, lap 37 next time. And yeah, it's over half a race done. Wes Richards is the first to be put down 1 lap, and yeah, he's still the last one running, so 26th of 27. And with only Richie Stanaway involved in that start crash, lucky that no other cars have been involved, but he is your only driver so far, and it just shows that, yeah, not only overtaking is difficult, but also it's really just a question of how you treat your enemies and how you treat your friends, and so far they've all been treating themselves as friends.
And I have to say, Wes Richards, I mean, yes, he did qualify last in this race, yes, he is running, you know, 1 lap down now, 26th in this race, but when it all comes down to it, all you need to do to get into the top 25 is just finish consistently. And Richards isn't doing anything really wrong by just, you know, staying on the racetrack and trying to keep his nose clean. And come the end of the day, if these drivers start retiring around him, he could still have a shot at getting into the top 25 in his TST Azura machine. So, interesting to keep the progress of the drivers even towards the rear of this field. Out front, however, Usiakola has pulled up that gap to 3 seconds once again over Motegi DG Philo in the battle for the first position, and David DeCorp has closed that gap back up to Philo a little bit, and it looks as though that Philo had himself a couple of laps where he was really able to put the pressure on, but perhaps, Marius, he's overused his tyres a little bit, and that's allowing DeCorp to come back into the picture once again. We're only about 5-6 laps away from perhaps the second round of pit stops.
Oh, and yes, we're not only seeing Ryan Terpstra going down into pit road, having his car towed, but also he has actually thrown the car into the barriers. Just taking a look at that now. We're of course going to get you a replay momentarily. He's been running behind Jesper Pedersen and Jason Lovett here, coming down the hairpin, down the long straight. He's just put the car sideways out of the turn, losing it right behind Jesper Pedersen, and then he's stuck in the wall here, so it's slammed right into the concrete wall there. No sense of returning onto the track after that, so race over, second retiree of the day, Ryan Terpstra.
Yeah, and it's not like on the oval side of this race course where you have the safer barrier to kind of disintegrate a little bit of that momentum. That's a solid concrete wall there for Terpstra, and that is going to be hugely disappointing for the 56 car, who qualified, you know, kind of in that midfield once again. He qualified in the 18th position. He's going to, however, be classified down in 26th position for the end of this race, and that is going to be hugely disappointing there for Terpstra. I've done that so often on this racetrack, and it's been a point of discussion all week long, Marius, that you've got to be very careful getting onto the throttle. And we talk about fatigue and everything coming back into play. You can't slam the throttle on coming out of these slow corners, and perhaps Terpstra wasn't paying attention too much, and the car just went bump, gone into the wall, race over.
Yeah, I think exactly that's what's happened. Terpstra has been running behind Pedersen and Lovett for a couple of laps right now, and you get used to what the guys are doing, so you're just running right behind them, and you kind of tend to relax, so you just yeah, you settle down, you just follow. I mean, you can't really overtake if you're not really much faster or if you risk a lot. So it looks like Terpstra has just been settling, and boom, that's all it takes to really put the car sideways. Putting the car sideways with this kind of tire model is most of the time putting the car very much sideways, and like Terpstra has shown, into the wall.
And I'm having a look at the top 5 drivers in this race here today, and we're talking about Alexei Usiakola, Motegi DG Philo, David DeCourt, Emil Spindel, and Yuda Narumi. These are the top 5 drivers in the championship at the moment, Marius. So, yes, they're not in the same order, but as I talked about at the start of this broadcast, things are going to get shaped up a bit. Philo's going to gain a couple of positions, Narumi's going to lose a couple, and it's going to be interesting as we move on. These looking as though they are the top 5 drivers in this series at the moment, and they're putting on once again a blistering performance. Usiakola dominating once again. Philo not that far behind. The corpse there, we don't talk about him, but he's that silent guy. He's just there, getting up the positions, and Spindell 4th and Narumi in 5th. I think these are our top 5 drivers of the championship at the moment.
Yeah, it just like that. The top 5 from 1st to 5th, 13 seconds, and rounding that up to 39 laps then, that is 0.3 of a second per lap. And well, they've all done one pit stop, so it's easy to lose a couple of seconds there. Enzo Bonita in 6th, already down 23 seconds, or 10 seconds off the top 5 right away. Still, I wouldn't say Emil Spindel and Yudai Narumi stand a chance this race in particular. Still, though, Spindel has seemed to find some pace, and he's one of the quickest in the last couple of laps, running 26.6 there. And also Narumi running a 0.7. They've been buckling up, so I'm not really sure what the strategy will be for the last stint. And as soon as the Corp and Philo start fighting, probably that chance of at least making up some time. Nevertheless, for now, the battle between the second and third place Philo and the Corp also, yeah, to a certain extent deciding the outcome of this race. Will they start fighting? They of course tend to lose time relatively quickly, and that will benefit Usiakola with the race win if he doesn't win the car. So currently they are following. Currently they are within 2.5 and 3.5 seconds of the leader here. But as soon as this starts fighting, they start going together, going at it, starting outbraking each other, they will lose them so massively that yeah, it will right quickly be 5 seconds, 6 seconds, and then Emil Spindel and Yudai Narumi will have caught up to them as well.
Checking in on Marc Aton in the 64 car, we talked about how he was able to work strategy to his advantage earlier on in this race. He is actually free stopping by the look of it. He came in on lap number 35, so he has not got enough fuel to get to the end of this race. He's currently stuck behind PJ Sturgios in the battle for the 18th position, and Caton looks as though he's going to have to come down to a pit road one more time. So one of the drivers really is having difficulties on this racetrack here today because of the fact that he's going to lose so much time. It's such a long pit lane here, and you're going at 37 miles an hour, one of the slowest pit lanes we'll see all season long. He really is going to have to try and find a way of making that time back up. Checking in on Paul Ilbrank in the battle for the 15th position. Here's caught Jason Lover, but again, finding it difficult to get past. They're running literally within about 2 car lengths as they're coming now down into turn number 10. They've got themselves Jesper Pedersen and Fabio De Carmo ahead of him. Their battle still carrying on the racetrack as well. Pedersen looking as though he's not been as close recently as Lovett getting very squirrely as they come out of turn number 10. This is going to give Ilbrink the slightest of chances as they come down the hill. He's going to look to the right hand side. Going to be the last late breakers. Ilbrink should get it into turn 11. So close between those two drivers. Ilbrink has it for the moment, but then now they've got to go switch it around. Coming into 12, close them again. Ilbrink almost touches there, and Lovett will have to fall in behind. But a great pass there by Paul Ilbrink. Too wide racing down to those last couple of corners is always very treacherous.
Yeah, and I had to take big breath there that moment. Paul Ilbrink and Jason Lovett going too wide into the left right-hander just before start finish there. Ilbrink, however, makes the pass here, 15th position for him. And, well, I think we'll be having the second pit stop of the race coming up for those who are on a 2-stop strategy. So, of course, keeping an eye on the leaders here. Davide Korb, Mogafido still out on track, not really losing much time. And also Narumi and Spindel out on track and not intending to make a pit stop yet. But that could change. And as soon as they've made their second pit stop, we know where these guys will be out. We know where this race is heading. And, yeah, in the position of Usiakola, I'd say all you need is a clean pit stop and then just bring this one home. In the position of Mogafilo, all you need is to push the car to the limit and just get this one down to about 1.5 seconds to have at least a chance of glimpsing at the victory here. Yeah, and at the chance of David de Korp being 1 second behind Philo, all you need is a good pit stop and Philo making a little mistake and you've got him leapfrogged.
Yep, and that's what you need, but I have to say, Yakola is still managing that pace out front. The gap is 2.8 seconds, actually about 2.9 seconds over Motegi DG Philo in the battle for the first position win. But it looks as though that 5-6 laps where Philo was catching Yakola really did hurt him, and he's been struggling ever since then. The corpse has come back into the picture. You talked about earlier on how, you know, Yakola had to keep on it just enough so that he could, you know, be prepared for any mistakes that might hurt him in pit road. Right now, it is Philo who's got to have a stunning pit in lap because of the simple fact that, you know, if he messes up just a tiny bit, that will allow the Corp behind him to get past. But let's not forget also that last time by, Philo came in for Yakola and the Corp. So Philo's likely to come in first once again. So you have more pressure because he knows he's got to get the job done early.
1 hour mark crossed here by the drivers, 1 hour and 1 the last time by, and we're yet to make the second pit stop of the race. 21 laps to go here at Twin Ring Motegi, 1 lap being almost 1.5 minutes long, so these guys have not got it in the bag yet. And yeah, you can't nearly feel safe in the position of being the race leader. Your race leader still is Alexius Yakola, followed by Moga Filho and Davide Korb rounding up the top 3. Emil Spindel still in 4th position in front of Udain Narumi. Enzo Bonito in 6th. Simon Cattell close to Bonito in 7th, so probably a battle heating up for 6th relatively soon. Thiago Alfao with a great strategy so far in 8th position. Christian Lorente and Joni Termelet rounding up the top 10, and it looks like Termele and Lorente have been going at it for a couple of laps right now. And just to compare that, well, Lorente started in 9th position and Termele started in 21st, so they are on a similar strategy and they are going at it since a couple of laps right now. And meanwhile, I think we had Dave Geeling in the pits.
Yeah, Dave Geeling, one of the first to pit here for the second round of pit stop. That puts him down into the 20th position for the time being, behind Xavier Bussov. Then Geeling started this race, let's not forget, in the 14th position, and it looks as though he's doing that early pit stop, but it could work out for him. We saw the early pit worked a little bit last time by. Philo was one of the drivers that's able to benefit, but also the late pit works as well. I think these drivers just want to make sure they don't come in trains of 4 or 5 cars together into this pit road. Pit road is one of the most treacherous places on this racetrack, as we talked about so many times in this race. With that traffic coming to play as well, however, these drivers got to be a little bit more careful of their placement on the racetrack. A lot of these drivers will be looking for a gap. If they can find a gap where they can come out into clean air, they'll probably come into pit road now. If they can't, however, then, you know, then it's going to have to be a case of them just hoping luck goes their way. And for DT Philo, he's kind of on the back foot right now because he's got to make sure that he can find a gap when he comes back out onto the racetrack. With the Corps, what, just 1.3 seconds behind him, Marius, he's got to make sure he A, nails his pit in, B, nails his pit stop, C, gets out okay, and D, doesn't come out around traffic.
Yeah, all of that together in one pit stop will be hard to do. Lap 44, the question is who will come in first, and you forgot one thing. Philo comes in first, as well as Yakola does this lap by. Philo also down pit road, and now it's a question if the Corps, yes, he's also coming in. So this has been irrelevant, as all are coming down the same lap, keeping a track of the gaps. 2.5 between Yakola and Philo, and 1.4 between Philo and the Corps. And now it's all cars down pit road, and as well 4th and 5th place Spindler and Narumi. Of course, keeping an eye on the backrunners as well, but so far all of them clean pit road, clean at a standstill, and Yakola going out first as expected. Philo running, and the Corps has to fuel more. He has to fuel more as expected, and he's running out third, and once again he has not benefited anything. However, on pit exit, Uzi Yakola right in front of Enzo Bonito, and that has been a great benefit for him now. Simon Cattell following Enzo Bonito right now. I just hope that Bonito realizes he's got the race leader now in front of him, and he has to make his pit stop still. Philo behind this pack, and the Corps still in third, so no place changes, as well as in 4th and 5th.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the critical thing. Yakola was able to get out ahead of Bonito and Cattell. So now he's got himself 2 fast drivers between himself and DG Philo. So even if Philo has a perfect outlap, he's going to struggle to close up to the Yakola. Yakola's done everything right in this race so far. DG Philo, however, has got himself now a little bit of a nicer gap over the Corps behind him. The Corps was a little bit longer on his pit stop, as we saw, and that meant that Philo could just take the pressure off himself just a little bit. It is currently Bonito running in 2nd position with Cattell in 3rd, but we expect these 2 drivers to come down pit road in the next couple of laps time. Yakola, however, has got it all made up for him. He actually was able to keep the race lead through that sequence of pit stops, so perfect timing there for Yakola Keep an eye on Cattell and Benito as they flick it to the left. Neither of them, Cattell comes down pit road, so he will relinquish what was third position for the time being. And keeping an eye on pit road, it looks like it's a bit of a quieter place than we expected it to be, but we expected it to get full very quickly as Afaro is in. And keeping an eye on drivers around him, no one else is coming in at the moment. Narumi and Spindell both stay out on the racetrack.
Yeah, and it looks like Bonito is on a bit of a different strategy here. So he stayed out. He's been under heavy pressure from Emil Spindel. From, I think it has been Simon Cattell, of course, who's down pit road right now. So Cattell, being early in the pit road, now is in the shotgun position. He has to make this gap last if he wants to get the position of Bonito. Brilliant race, however, so far from Cattell. Nevertheless, also been keeping track of other place changes or place switches here in the back of the grid. Around place 10, Joni Termele made up the position against Christian Lorente. We've been talking about it, the fight for the 9th position actually it is. Termele has made the position and now has Busom still in front of him, who is however on a 3-stop strategy, so he should be falling back relatively soon. Marcus Kettin in currently 8th position, that should be, has not yet been in the pits, as well as PJ Sturgis. They've been going ahead for a couple of laps. Thiago Afau has been in the pit. Also, Thiago Afau, we haven't really talked about him much. Simon Cattell just been in the pits. Yudai Narumi and of course the top 5 completely been in the same lap into the pits. And taking a look at the gap between Usiakola and Filo from 2.5, 2.8. So just the right thing to do from Usiakola to pit out right ahead of Bonito and Cattell. 3.1 this time by David de Korp, 4.1. De Korp is in the 1 second to Filho. Yeah, however, that is not enough to make the pass, so he has to do more to get the 2nd position. Not a lot of changes, but around place 2, it could just be the one, benefiting Jakola with the race win and benefiting Filho with the 2nd position, question mark, if David de Korp is not able to make the pass.
We're getting word from pit road that one of these drivers actually didn't get fuel put into their cars on this pit stop. So we'll keep an eye out to see what happened with that. But that's going to be hugely disappointing for whoever that was. But Benito still sat in the 2nd position, of course. He will have to pit in the next couple of laps or so. But that will give Filo back 2nd position once his pit stops are sorted out. Yakoda, however, didn't gain as much as he did on the first pit stop this time by. Perhaps that was by coming down on the same lap as Motegi DG Filo and David de Korp, who were battling for 1st, 2nd and 3rd position, of course, on the racetrack. Benito in the 73 car has gone now 2-3 laps longer than Yakola, Filo and de Korp around him. We're expecting him to come into pit road this time by. There's not much he's got left in that fuel tank, of course, as he comes down into the penultimate corner. He surely has to come in this time by, and indeed he does. He'll slow it all the way down, flicking it right now left, once again catching the grass a little bit there, very close to the wall, down to 37 miles an hour, but he's got himself another car on pit road as well. That is Jason Lovett, and it is Lovett who is the driver who did not get fuel on his last pit stop. His fuel guy just wasn't able to get the fuel in.
Yeah, we've been a bit thoughtless about what has happened, because apparently he took a tow, but coming out of the pit road everything seemed fine, but then just a couple of laps later, a couple of turns later in fact, Jason Lovett running out of fuel, putting the car into fuel saving mode, and of course not enough for him to complete another lap, so he had to take a tow, had to refuel the car, and well, he's already 1 lap down behind Wes Richards this time by. So race pretty much over for Jason Lovett after a great performance around 12th, 15th position around that. Everyone has pitted right now, Enzo Bonito being the last one to do that. And by pitting so late, we've seen Cattell versus Bonito, and Cattell has been in 3 laps earlier and Bonito has been in 3 laps later, and Bonito has extended the gap to 5 seconds almost. So a great move by Bonito, might be the move securing him the 6th position, maybe a bit less than he's expected, especially after he's been holding on 5 battle in the first stint. However, 10 seconds, he's down to place 5 right now, 5 seconds to Cattell, and he has to bring this one home right now.
PJ Sturgeon, last of the drivers to make his 2nd pit stop in this race. Let's not forget that Marcus Caton running in the 9th position. We believe he has to make 1 more pit stop in this race. If you run through your top 10 drivers, it is Aleski Usiakola leading the way by 4 seconds now over Motegi DG Filo. David de Korp in 3rd, Emil Spindel in 4th, Yudi Narumi in 5th, Enzo Benito in 6th, Simon Cattell 7th, Thiago Afau 8th, Marcus Caton in 9th, as Xavier Busom's running out your top 10. We'll be back after these messages and a word. TV stations. And run number 5 and 6 of the 2012 Proto Ice $1,000 kart will be taking place at 9 PM GMT from Suzuka International Raceway. They will be live, of course, all race long on GlacierTV. Whilst we were away, we had a couple of drivers come onto pit road. We expect Marcus Caton to come onto pit road in the next couple of laps as well, and that really is going to help out Yorni Tamada, who started this race down in 21st position, Marius. He looks as though he's going to really get into the 9th position overall.
Yeah, great race from Terminal so far. He stood out of trouble when there was a crash ahead between Cattell, Bonito and Richie Stanaway. Of course, that has taken out Stanaway off the entire race. Yeah, he's been benefiting from that and also from several other little incidents. For example, when Ryan Terpstra put the car into the wall, and also Jason Lovett, who's been right at his tail. Nevertheless, he's not completely safe. Should be 9th position for him soon. Christian Rente 2 seconds behind him. Dave Geeling 4 and Pierre Obitsu 7 seconds. And it's not really what you would call safe. However, Termele has to bring this one down. 14 laps to go for him and of course all the other drivers. Alexius Iaccola completed his 50th lap this time by, and well, he's got nothing really to do instead of keep this gap. Nevertheless, Usiakola pushing the car to the max once again. Probably this is the right zone, right thing. Just get back into the zone, just get back into fast racing, push the car to the limit. Not exactly over, at least to the limit. And he's extended the gap to 4.1 seconds. And Fido still second, Davide Korb still third. And as for now, it doesn't really look like De Korb is trying to push the car further than he can. He's still the passive kind of driver, putting a really smooth performance in. Under the radar, not really any incidents for him. And I think even if this is going to be the 3rd place for him, it's been a brilliant performance. And despite the fact that you can't really overtake if you're not really close enough, all he could do.
Yeah, that 58 Orion machine there, looking as though he can get close to the rear of DG Philo. He was the closest he'd ever been, just 4 tenths of a second behind. A couple of laps to go, but once Philo's got himself down in this, the 3rd and final stint of this race, he's been able to pull that gap out just a little bit. It is 1.1 seconds last time by. It's got itself up to about 1.2 seconds this time by. So Philo just putting away a little bit. Yakoda still managing that gap out front. His last lap time, the 1:26.8, compare that to Philo's 1:26.6. Doesn't matter with that difference, even if Philo was 2 tenths of a second faster. For the rest of this race, he wouldn't be able to catch Yakoda. But I'm having a look to see where Caton is likely to feed into this. We're expecting him to say, come down to pit road in the next couple of laps. In fact, he comes down this time by. So we're expecting him to kind of come right into the middle of that 16th place battle. Paul Ilbrink, Xavier Bustos, PJ Sturgis, Miguel Martin. We expect him to come out somewhere around there. Of course, he doesn't have to take as much fuel. He might not even take tyres this time by. He's now into his pit stop. We'll see whether he takes tyres. Indeed, it looks like he does. He's going to take some fuel. It's not going to be much long for him, though. He is already back out onto the racetrack. Fabio De Carmo is just coming down the start-finish line. It looks like he should just about get out ahead of Caton. And then Pedersen will get out as well. Now Caton can get back onto the racetrack, and it looks like he's going to lose in position to Paul Ilbrank. So he's now down into the 16th position, but ahead of Xavier Bustos, the only other driver to do a 3-stop race here today.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem that this has been the strategy for victory here, or for anything really. Caton could have been in a good position if he just pitted out in front of Fabio De Carmo, being about 2 seconds further than he is now. But yeah, for them it might be playing out, but still Caton being stuck right behind Paul Ilbrink, Jasper Peterson and Fabio De Carmo right now. And he's only got fuel for 13 laps right now, fresh tires, so if there would be a place to start pushing the car and to start being at the limit, this would be it. And with being stuck as Marcus Caton is right now, he's probably not getting the chance to do so.
And of course, next week, the iRacing.com Pro Series of Road Racing heads over to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, to the road course, one of the most historic racetracks in the world. The track that played host, of course, to the FIA Formula 1 World Championship between 2000 and 2007. Will be live from 1:30 PM GMT once again from Indy. Meanwhile, it is Yakoda still leading the way. And I have to say, though, that this field is spread out so much. There's not that much left going on the racetrack. Geeling is trying to catch Christian Lorente. This is the battle for the 10th position. And Geelink looking as though he was 3 times per second faster that previous lap over the Rente, but I'm not sure he's got the time to do anything, Marius.
Yeah, and you say it's not really much going on. I wouldn't particularly say it's boring, but I mean, you see place 13, there's a battle going down all the way to place 17, and then Peter Sturgis being caught kind of in the middle between that. Place 19 to place 22 is also a battle, and these guys are not really much slower than the leaders, just about 1 second per lap. And speaking of which, Alexiou Siakola, your race leader, will be catching the first lap cars in the next couple of laps, starting with Andrea Baldi in 23rd. Of course, we still have only 3 retirees, being Wes Richards the only one with 1 lap down yet. And yeah, it's not particularly boring. I mean, it's just it's sorted out, if you will. Motegi not being a track where you can expect lots of overtakings and lots of aggressive maneuvers. Still though, the entire race so far, lots of close racing, however, and best example for that right now, the battle for 13th position together with Marcus Ketten closing up that snail, and Ketten of course being relatively aggressive right now, as well as Busoms. These are the drivers on the V-stop strategy, so they've got the freshest tires A, the lowest fuel B, and overall just the best car for the last stint now. And if Ketten wants to make this a good strategy, he wants to get the 13th position, and that's still 3 places ahead of him where he is right now.
You forgot to attach a C to your last point there, but we'll let you off. And yeah, Caton really has got to try and drive his way through the field to make anything left of that free-stop strategy. Really was not the way to go, and we saw this at Spa last week as well. A couple of drivers trying to do something a little bit different on strategy, and it wasn't working out for them. Caton looking very close though to the rear of Paul Ilbrand as they come now down into turn number 4. He had to look down the inside, had to think better of it there, but Caton is desperate to get past Paul Ilbrand. You can see Jesper Pedersen actually really close now to Fabio De Calma as they go into the S's. He's not going to try and make a move down there. He is trying to make a move down there. It's not going to work for him. But Pedersen there is desperate to try and get past De Calma. Almost making a move down there. He's looking to move down to the inside once again as they come now down into turn number 9. Pedersen is on fire at the moment. De Calma is struggling, but Pedersen really just got to keep it in check, try and get a good drive now as they come out of turn number 10. Now they come down the hill, and this is where he's not got the gap. And Caton also not got the gap as well. Both these drivers look as though they're going to try and make a move down to the inside. We're about 5 car lengths back. It's not going to happen. What you do, guys, you try and get it out of the final corner. Pedersen now has just got to flick it nicely to the left as they come out of the final corner. Now he can try and make a move, but again, not quite close enough. Paul Ilbrand also being able to defend for Marcus Caton, but Caton and Pedersen looking as though they're desperate to try and make themselves up a couple of positions.
Yeah, and Ketten must be biting the wheel right now. He's got the clearly fastest car in this battle, and he's got the freshest set of tires as well as Xavier Busoms behind him. But he's just not able to benefit from the battle ahead. Fabio Do Carmo and Jesper Pedersen being one of the few drivers scoring the pro license in the Season 3, so they've not got the license for so far. Yet, for example, Fabio Do Carmo also started way down the grid in 20th position. He's been in 10th for a mere time of the race. Now in 13th is still a great race for him so far, followed by Pedersen and Ilbrand. And there's just nothing decided yet, as well as there, as well as in the 9th position, where still we've got Miguel Martin leading Temo Ivon and Joao Pino and Joao Cardoso. So nothing decided there as well, and as well around the top 5. Not really sure who's going to score 2nd, not really sure who's going to score 4th. Respectively, that's the battles between Philo, De Korp and Spindle and Narumi.
Yeah, and those battles are all going on, but it looks so for the time being, Philo's been able to get himself a 1.6 second gap over David De Korp in the battle for the 2nd position. So that looks as though it's a little bit secure for the time being. However, Spindle and Narumi, that isn't over yet. And I'm just keeping an eye. After Pedersen had that great run, he's been dropped back to about 3 car lengths behind. Caton trying to make a move down into turn number 1, not using that slipstream, however, and that's hurting his chances to make the move as they come now out of turn number 1. He's going to perhaps try and use that draft a little bit more, but Caton not lining up these passes very well at the moment, and he's running out of time. We've got less than 10 laps to go here. He's got the chance to gain about 2-3 positions, but he's struggling to even get past Paul Ilbrand at the moment. And let's not take anything away from Ilbrand. He's had himself a great race, rounding out your top 15 as Caton gets right up to the rear of Ilbrand, coming out of turn 4 there, and Ilbrand doing a good job in that Radical Steel Series machine. But Narumi, I want to check in on him in that battle for the 4th position. He had a great race at Spa-Francorchamps last week. This week again, in the top 5. He's been in the top 5 pretty much all race long. He has got Spindale ahead of him, however, and Narumi goes off there. And that was just a crazy maneuver. He got himself onto the power. This was down into turn number 3. He puts a power on. He just catches the grass a little bit there, puts him off the racetrack. Doesn't lose a position, but well,
and that's the fatigue.
Yeah,
that is pretty much only fatigue for Yuda Narumi. It could have ended way differently than that. It's not really far to the wall on the right side, and he could have as well just flicked it right into there. Still though, great catch by him. So he's caught the car and kept it safe. And if this isn't the thing to realize to settle for your position, then I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and Bruni was so close out. I almost thought the curse of the commentators was going to strike again here on GlacierTV. He was able to pick it up, but now he is about 4 seconds behind Emil Spindale in that battle for the 4th position. So the CST Azuro machine now of Spindale looking as though he's got that place secure for the time being. As it is, let's use Yakoda working on lap now, the 58 now. He's got himself 3 cars ahead of him, who he's going to put a lap down, perhaps putting in the race. It's Sal Pino, Timo Even and Miguel Martin, battling for 19th, 20th and 21st positions on the racetrack respectively. We haven't talked much about these drivers. Even's had himself a poor driver today, started 16th, now running in 20th. Miguel Martin, he started 12th, now running down in 19th position. And Hal Pino is the only of these drivers to be where he started. And disappointing performances today for Even and Martin.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened to Timo there. Timo, of course, also being the star in the Proto Ice, one of the fastest drivers in the HPD, and usually also one of the drivers being a top runner in the Formula 1 car. And Joao Pinho and Miguel Martin around him, relatively new to the series, but also usually quite quick guys. I mean, to make the Pro Series, you also have to be a relatively quick guy, else you won't get the license. But not really the day for them, and well, if we get them to an interview, I'm pretty sure they were the ones saying that this is not one of their favorite tracks.
Yeah, and if you can't find the balance on this race car, it all just disappears quicker than you can say anything. You know, you can't keep the balance in the slow corners. You haven't got, you know, the momentum to carry you on the faster corners, and then you're a little bit more treacherous in the faster corners, and it all kind of, you know, compounds itself all race long, and it's hugely disappointing for both of those drivers. It's going to hurt their championship standings as well. And I have to say, in that battle between, what, 13th and 16th, it looks like it's kind of calmed itself down for the moment. Yes, the car is only 2 car lengths ahead of Pedersen, and Pedersen's only 4 car lengths ahead of Ilbrang, and Ilbrang's only 2 car lengths ahead of Caton, but neither of these drivers have been able to set up a path. And Caton, that strategy's gone from bad to worse for him, as it looks as though he's not going to be able to gain many positions, if any at all, left in this race. We are working now on lap number 59 of 64, so Marius, we're approaching the last 5 laps of this race, but we have to go back to Yakoda. The gap's 4.5 seconds, and he's dominating, but the Corps has catched Philo, and once again, in the latter stages of the run, Philo's struggling.
Yeah, he is struggling. Being in a struggling position, it's just not enough to benefit from it, and just like Marcus Ketten still is biting his wheel, as well as Davide Korb might start to do that now. The Corp being within 1 second, sometimes around 5/10 even, and the cars being currently overtaking a few lapped cars here around place 22. There were some chances to get really close, but all you need to do is get enough draft, then put the car aside, and then really make the move under the braking. And to do all that together, you not only need a slight mistake from your enemy. So talking about Davide Korb being a passive driver and being under the radar, I don't think he'll start anything risky. If he can, he has to be close enough to start even anything risky, so he's not really in the position yet. However, you said it, Mogafilo struggling in the last couple of laps, just as he's been in the first and the second stint. So being half a second ahead and having some guy like Davide Korb pushing you from the rear, it's not really a situation where you can settle down, not like Lexius Iacola being in the lead with 4.5 seconds right now. The second position is not yet decided.
Indeed, and Decor, again, he's struggling to really set himself up for a pass, and it's been a story of Decor's race all race long. If he can get up to within half a second, he just drops back by half a second, because once he's especially in the sweeping S's, he just can't keep that car pointing in the right direction. He was actually slow there out of turn number 9 as well. That's allowed Philo to release a bit of a pressure from himself as they come down the hill once again. As I say, we've got ourselves, 4 laps left to go at the line. It is still Yakola, your race leader. Motegi DG Philo in second, David Accord in third, Email Spindal in fourth, and Yudi Narumi rounding out your top 5. That battle we were talking about with DeCarmo, Pedersen, Ilbrink and Caton, that is still exactly the same as being. We'll keep an eye on that on the racetrack as well. Narumi has caught back up slightly to the rear of Emil Spindal, so it just shows that Narumi has got the pace. He actually set the fastest lap of his race just a couple of laps ago. So as he gets again, I need to stop talking about
just
Narumi.
Stop talking about him, please. This is the second time when Narumi almost puts the car into the barriers, and Yudai, please, you've got 10 seconds to the rear, and you're just not gonna get Spindle in that short of time. Just settle for it, please.
Yeah, so I will not talk about the 76 car for the rest of this race. A big shout out, by the way, to Marty Petila in at MPI Racer. He said the last 10 laps of Motegi are always the best. We've still got perhaps a couple of fireworks left to go, and you know, fuel could come into play as well. These drivers have got to take enough fuel to get to the start-finish line and back onto pit road. But you know, it could be interesting to see what happens at the end of the race as well. You know, these last couple of laps, someone might make a big, bold move down perhaps into turn number 11. We don't know about that. I have to say, though, Philo's got himself a couple of cars he needs to pass before the end of this race, and there's a very slow car there, who's, I believe that was looking at Yakola pass. That was Timo Evenon there. But once Philo comes up behind this traffic, these last couple of laps, that might hurt him a little bit, because Philo has been in clean air all race long, and he's not had to deal with that car in traffic.
Yeah, and it's only 3 laps to go now, this time by 3 laps to go, settling for second position, or Davide Korb getting the second position as well. And they are catching up for the battle between Martin, Ivonen and Pino, where Alexius Yakola is right now. But these drivers are well aware of what's going around them, so not really anything to be afraid of. So I'm expecting to this for this to go relatively smooth. Philo and Davide Korb will be expected, of course. So as soon as they are passed, it's once again free and clean racing. And Davide Korb being 1 second behind, he didn't really have a clear chance so far, Will, and I just don't think it's going to come.
I don't either. And I have to say, Wes Richards, just having a look at him, he slowed down to let a load of cars go past in his 43 car, and then just actually took to the inside of turn number 1. He didn't want to get into anyone's way at all, so much of the fact that he decided to do a bit of off-roading there in his 43 car. He sat in the 24th position, currently scored 2 laps down. To run through your retirements, we have Jason Lovett out of the race. He had fuel issues. He was not able to get his car refueled. Ryan Turkshire is out of the race. We saw him smacking the wall there, coming out of turn number 10. And Richie Stanaway as well. We saw him. We talked about it quite a lot on the first lap. We'll show you a replay for those of you just joining us after the race as well. But Yakola has been a dominant story of the day, and I'm going to have to say, I want to do this a bit early today, but we talk about driver of the race, we could talk about Yakola, but really, it's all got to come down to the 77 machine of Yoni Tomada. He's come up from 21st position, sitting now prettily in the top 10.
Yeah, and he's also been kind of at the radar. He's been battling with Christian Rorente for the entire second stint, basically, and he's been broken free from Christian Rorente by 7 seconds, and it's just, he's almost got this now, and yeah, breaking free is the one thing, but then extending your lead to the enemy to 7 seconds is also a great thing. And talking about Christian Rorente, he's only 2 seconds ahead of Dave Geeling and Pierre Obizzo, and not really sure about if he's really struggling, but yeah, he's running kind of similar times than Geeling, so I don't think it's much of a risk there. So they are going to end this as it is. So focus lies on the second position. Focus lies on, of course, the battle between Pedersen, Carmo, Ilbrink and Katten for 13th. But of course, excuse us, we've only got 1 set of cameras and 1 screen. So we're going to stick to the second position. Katten has got a good run, however, for the 15th position. Paul Ilbrink makes a mistake. Yeah, it could just be enough, and Paul Ilbrink doesn't realize that Katten is next to him. He's hitting him. And now still side by side, and Katten down the last turn, very squarely on the braking, and Xavier Busams is there.
Yeah, and Busams came from absolutely nowhere. While these drivers were fighting it out, Busams was able to get himself into that mix. He's now been able to get himself past Paul Ilbank as well. Ilbank is going to be hugely peeved off after this race there, as he's lost himself a number of positions late on in this race. Caton was able to get past him there. A bit of dirty driving by both those drivers as they came down the hill. Caton had the outside line and he just didn't realise it Ilbank, and then it came down to the final corner. He finally lets Caton go past, and then Busson just turns him a little bit there, down the front straight away. But meanwhile, while this is all going on, Yusi Yakola is on his final lap, working himself down into turn number 4. We always talk about how Motegi can have interesting finishes. Hopefully for Yakola, there'll be nothing for him that will go wrong. He's got himself 2 cars ahead of him, he can see in the distance, but neither of those should really come into play. Although, to be fair, that is Paul Ilbank and Xavier Busson. And Ilbank really is going to be charging to try and get himself a position in this last couple of laps. But Yakola now coming down into turn number 9 for the final time. Just to talk about the dominance of this driver, he's led pretty much the entire way except for the first sequence of pit stops, where he lost the lead while Ferrari stayed out a little bit longer. That second round of pit stops, he kept the lead. He had that much of a gap over the rest of the field as himself, Vilo and DeCorp came in together. Yakola coming down into the final 2 couples of corners now, out of turn number 11, just that left-hand flick left to go, and then the final chicane. He won at Circuit des Spa-Francorchamps last week. This time, he's going to win 2 in a row. Aleksey Yakola takes his second victory in the iRacing.com Road Pro Series.
Very close for second position, very close. David DeCorp gets the run off the last turn, but it's just not enough. Whoa, that has been incredibly close, and it's just about under 100th of a difference between the drivers.
Yeah, and DeCorp gets a perfect run out of the final corner there. He lined up alongside, I'll tell you what, if he'd stayed in the slipstream and pulled out at the last second, he perhaps could have at least got side by side. You always know what happens when you go side by side on the final couple of corners. But DeCorp will have to settle for the 3rd position in this race. Brindell is going to take home the 4th position. Udana Rumi will take home 5th. Enzo Benito coming past the line now. He's going to claim 6th position in this race, with Simon Cattell coming out the final corner as well to claim 7th position. Thiago Alfaro, we talked about, he led actually a couple of laps earlier on in this race. He's going to come home in the 8th position with Yorni Tamada. Talk about him. He started this race down in the 21st position, will finish in the top 10. So he's got it all going on for him. But checking on that battle, as I say, very quickly, DeCarmo will stay ahead of Pedersen. Pedersen getting a little bit squirrely out of turn number 10 there. So he's not going to be able to make a move as they come down the hill. Hatton, again, close, but not quite close enough. He kept the drive, he could have had a go. But it looks as though these 3 drivers are going to finish as they were coming into the final lap. Hatton looking as though he's closing up a little bit. He might try and do something at the final corner, as we saw DeCorp doing, but they're not quite close enough. They're going to finish with DeCarmo 13th, Pedersen 14th, and Hatton in 15th. PJ Sturgis from nowhere claimed 16th position. Xavier Busson 17th, but Paul Ilbank, my God, he is going to be angry after that moment there. But part of it was his fault, Marius. He just didn't realise that he had Caton on his outside.
Yeah, and by that, Paul Ilbank being the one to lose really much. PJ Sturgis, however, gained 2 positions right away, so he's got lucky. And, however, finished 2 places ahead of where he were. Good race for him. And, of course, we'll have some interviews for you momentarily, as the drivers just need to settle, probably grab for a bottle of water there. Yeah, well, I think we've been talking about this being a boring race. I really wouldn't say it was boring. It's not one of your particular combos where you would say it's going to be very interesting and a lot of overtakes, but still this has been a very close race in not just several positions. I mean, we've had, what, like 4 or 5 battles going on at the same time?
Yeah, and the difficult thing is that these drivers have to, you know, keep themselves mentally and physically going throughout the race. We saw those last 10-15 laps, a couple of drivers really starting to get that fatigue going down to them. You see all the drivers coming down towards pit road now. That is a requirement by the iRacing first officials. The first officials demanding that everyone brings their car down towards pit road to make sure they're not trying to underfuel that car too much. But yeah, you're completely right. These drivers, you know, it's a difficult track, and it's a track where you can get frustrated very easily. You talk about, for example, turn 3, where you try and put the power on and the car just wants to snap on you. You always have it. We're going to run through your top 10 drivers very quickly. Aleksey Yakola takes home victory by 7 seconds in the end over Motegi Filo, who, check this out, after 64 laps of racing, just 1/10 of a second ahead of David DeCorp in 3rd. Emil Spindel will comes home, sorry, in the 4th position, with Yudo Narumi, the hometown hero, in the 5th spot. Enzo Benito in 6th, Simon Cattell in 7th, Tiago Alfaro in 8th. Yoni Tamara, will talk to him in just a second, in 9th, Christian Lorente in 10th. The rest of the results coming up on your screen. Meanwhile, my drive of the day at the very least, Yoni Tamara, you started this race all the way down the field in the 21st position. You come home 9th. Tell us about your race.
Well, start was pretty hard because there was cars everywhere. I somehow managed to got 14th after first lap. Then I struggled with draft for first stint, and then I got, I don't know, 3 or 4 guys on pit stops, and then it was quite easy to do my own pace and get still 1 position.
And as soon as you got through that first lap, I mean, it was treacherous, cars all over the place, but it seemed as though that it was very difficult for you to kind of move your way through the field through them. How important was strategy to helping your charge into the top 10?
Well, I couldn't pass those cars without my pit stop, really. It was so hard. My strategy helped it a lot.
But a 9th place finish is, you know, exactly what you want from this race, all things considered. When you consider the championship standings, I mean, it's going to help you a little bit as well. Going over to the Brickyard, Indianapolis, next week. You're looking forward to that, and how's it helping your drive for the top 25?
Well, sorry, I didn't hear the question.
No worries. Indy next week. Okay, I'll break it down. Indy next week. You looking forward to it?
I will probably skip that round because I don't really like that track, but we'll see.
In championship standings, you're up into 8th position now, actually 1 point ahead of Simon Cattell. Happy?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I'm really happy.
Well, congratulations on your finish. Driver of the Day award goes to you. And moving on to our race winner, Mr. Dracula, Haleski Yakoda, congratulations, 2 out of 2. Job done.
Yeah, thanks.
Dominant race. Good start this time, so you're able to keep the lead on that first lap. But just how much did you have to manage that gap over the race? So there was times when DG Philo behind you is getting some great runs.
Well, everybody knows this track is so hard, and those tires just melt down. And well, it was just like I do a fast lap. Mogar did better lap on the next one. So it's like when do you use those tires? You can little bit change that.
And yeah, it did seem as though that final stint you were able to pull out a bigger gap, and then that first pit stop you actually gained about 2 seconds over Philo. How important was it pitting later than him when you considered the course of the race afterwards?
Well, I thought that Mogar had more fuel than I had on the first stint, but I was probably lucky or something. And the next stint he was much faster than I, and I burned my tires out on the beginning of the stint, and the last stint was just only I was lucky there too, because I got front of Enzo, and Mogar needs to stay behind him a couple laps, so I were able to put some gap there or something.
And 2 pole positions, 2 race victories. Sorry, I take that back. Yeah, 1 pole position, 2 race victories. Going to the Brickyard next week to the historic Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You're trying to make it 3 out of 3 when it comes to bringing the car home?
Well, I do very little practice to Motegi because I don't really like this track. I haven't been racing here than only 1 time or something. That Indianapolis is much more fun than this, I think.
And is always traditional when someone wins a race, they're allowed to talk in their own language. Yoni, go ahead.
No, chance missed.
No,
Too
no,
late.
he's there, he's there.
Aleksi, voiko tylsemmäksi nää kisa muuttua?
No ei oikeastaan, oli kyllä tosi tiukka kisa, että Moukari tuli kovaa takana koko ajan ja ei oikeastaan voinut yhtään hellittää missään vaiheessa. Itse teit virheen, heti 40 otti kaveri kiinni, ajat kovaa, sitten taas tuli renkaat, kaveri tuli takaa kovempaa ja sitten taas se solatti renkaat. Oli semmoista sakkipeliä oikeastaan koko kisa, että ei voinut kyllä löysätä missään vaiheessa.
Et pelännyt pitstoppeja ennenkään, että tulee ohi?
No en oikeastaan, että kyllä mä tiesin sen jo silloin, kun ekalla stintillä olin pidemmällä. Tai no siis enemmän oli bensaa kuin Moukarilla, että pääsin siinä sitten vähän tekemään käppiä. Mutta ei siinä, kyllä ainakin bensa riitti maaliin asti.
Ei siinä mitään, 2 paalua, 2 voittoa, tällä hetkellä clean sweep, jatketaan tästä, onnittelut kisan voitosta.
Joo, kiitoksia ja thanks to the team and for the support and all of you guys, thank you.
Cheers. And from first position, we go down to second position. DJ DG Philo, congratulations, you come home second in this race. And it looks as though for parts, you're faster than Yakola ahead of you. But it just looks like the second part of a stint, it kind of started going a bit wrong for you, struggling a little bit with grip.
Hello, Will. Well, it was a hard race because Motegi is a very hard track. Plenty of corners, you have to be focused 100% of time. There's almost no room for mistakes. I could get a very good start, although I didn't do close to my best on qualify. But on this track you have really to go risky, and my first lap was a good lap. The second one I did a mistake and lost the lap. But I could get the second position. Actually, I almost got first, but Alexei defended his position on a very clean way. And I was chasing him for a good part of the race, and looked like I had a better performance with used tires than him. But especially on last stint, I struggled a bit with the car's back markers, because my car was not handling well on dirty air when I was on draft, so I couldn't get close to them. And especially on last laps, I got 2 back markers in my front. I don't remember exactly, but I think that it was Miguel and Timo Ivonin, and they were fighting for position, and one of them got wing damage. So I couldn't get closer, and Davi almost got my position last lap. But yeah, it was an excellent race, excellent result. The 2 podiums, second place on standings. Hope my luck keeps this way till the end of the season.
Yeah, I have to say that coming up the last corner, it looked as though that Decor had a good run, but I want to take you back to that first pit stop. You pitted a good number of laps behind, and so before Yakola ahead of you. Was there any reason for that? Were you just trying to do the undercut, or was it just the fact that, you know, the tyres wearing out a bit on you?
Well, this track can be quite dangerous to run with tires too worn out. And from my practice sessions, I knew I could do 23 laps, but I decided to go a bit conservative and stop on after 22 laps. And they, both Alexei and Davi, went a bit longer. But I did that to ensure I wouldn't run out of tires. And those slow corners exits can be quite tricky when you have worn tires. So I decided to play safe, and I think it's worth sometimes to go safe.
And next week, we're going to the Brickyard, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. One of my favourite tracks in the world, actually, except only when they turn left. You looking forward to it? And can you finally break the streak of Yakola?
Hope so. Indianapolis is a challenging track, especially on turn 1. That's quite easy to run off track on cornering try and get a black flag. So it will be a race that demands concentration also. But there will be some overtaking opportunities due to the long straight. I hope it's an exciting race also, and hope to win the race. We always go to a race thinking on winning, but I always have to remember that my focus is to get the top 25 to get the license. My second objective is to do well on standings. So we can't throw out a race on a silly mistake, trying to go to the best lap or going all in for the victory.
Well, congratulations on second place, second in the standings as well. And we'll see you next week at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Fabio Di Carmo had himself an interesting race. The Brazilian having to struggle hard in that 13th position, but able to bring the car home. And Fabio, it looks as though you're driving for your life there on that third stint with Pedersen, Caton, and Ilbrandt and Busson behind you.
Just a second, Will. I have to thank the Team Radicals and Steel Series for the support. And now, Fabio, go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Well, it was quite a difficult race for me. I think it was maybe the most difficult race I had in iRacing. We had a kind of mess on first lap. I was able to get 10 positions. A few guys behind me were faster, so the first stint and the second stint I had just to defend my position, which was really hard. Through the final stint, I had to defend my position from Jasper. I didn't have quite a great car on old tires, which made me really unbalanced through the finish of the stints, through the finish of the race as well. So yeah, it was quite hard, but I'm truly happy to get to the top 20, and I just want to thank my whole family and all the guys there at Four Brothers Motorsport for supporting me all the way through.
Cheers. And you have a look at the way that race panned out. It seemed to be that a couple of drivers could, get very close to you, but were you having to defend that hard, or was it just a case of hitting your braking points and you're hoping that anyone else wouldn't be able to get the turning points?
Well, I had a couple of battles with Jasper Pedersen, and we actually were too wide a couple of times. We were side by side through a couple of corners, and well, I think I had a great car on straight line. I had in the last minute I made the aerodynamic change to maybe get a few tenths up on my laps. So yeah, I think it worked quite well.
And next week go to the Brickyard to Indianapolis. Are you looking forward to that race?
Yeah, it's a great track. I haven't raced quite well there yet, but I have practiced a little, and it's a fun track. I'm looking forward for sure.
Fabio Di Carmo moving himself up into the 20th positions in the standings, and very quickly we want to talk to Paul Ilbrandt. Paul, you must be a little bit annoyed at that moment there towards the end of the race with yourself and Caton, but take us through that and also your race as well.
Yeah, it was pretty annoying because I just got a bad run on the back straight, and Marcus was really close behind me, and I had to cover the inside, and he took the undercut in the car, and we kind of banged wheels throughout the last couple of corners, and yeah, I just threw positions because of that. But the real problem was just lap 1 when I took it a bit, because I wanted to take it a bit careful in turn 3. I took a bit of a wide line and went off track and spun the car. So my pretty good qualified position for my kind of driver was immediately gone there, and I had to start from the back all over again.
And you did a free strategy which, you know, it worked for a while, but then when you came out of the final stop, it must have just been horrible to see those 4 cars ahead of you, and it's just struggling to try and get past them.
I just did a 2-stop strategy. So,
sorry, I take that back.
Yeah, I was on a bit of a long first stint, and I was also caught behind Ryan Terpstra and a couple of other cars who pitted a bit early, some of them. So I just took a bit of a shorter second stint than I was originally planning, and it worked out well because I got out in front of the most of them. But yeah, it was just annoying that at the end we were stuck again behind Fabio, who did a great job just keeping his position, of course. But yeah, would have loved to had a bit more of clean air throughout the race.
And next week, I mean, you sat 17th in the championship. I mean, you could have been possibly in 15th, but are you looking for a better showing at the Brickyard next week?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite tracks, but well, in the first race I got my qualifying. In this race, the race went just wrong, so I hope to get it both together at the United States and do a better job there. I just want to thank Team Radicals and SteelSeries for the support, which was really great this week because we had a great car to run in the top 10. But unfortunately, it didn't happen for me. But Mogger did second, so I'm happy with that.
A lot of love today for Annika Ostrov. So yeah, well done, Paul. I know it's a disappointing end to your race, but we'll see you next week at Indy. And Marius, very quickly, I want to run through the top 10 drivers in the championship before we go. Yakono, of course, leading way, 100 points, 2 races, 2 victories, job done. DG Philo, second, 2 races, 2 podiums. Yudai Narumi in third, David Court in fourth, ML Speedo fifth, Enzo Benito in sixth, Christian Lorente in seventh, Yoni Tamara in eighth, Simon Cattell ninth, and Dave Geeling in 10th. But you look what all these drivers come from. We have got ourselves 9 different nationalities represented in the top 10 drivers.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, even alone tonight, we've of course had a Finnish guy, which you probably have heard if you've listened to that. We've had Brazilians, we've had a Dutchman, and well, in the top 3 we're only missing the French guy then, and well, even in the top 5 we've got drivers from 3 different continents. So.
Yeah, and we can go on about how there's no Germans, because there's no Germans here, because they're all too good and they're all racing in the Grand Prix World Championship Series already next year.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But it is time for us to have a little bit of a break, because we'll be back, of course, in a Blondie MX5 World Tour, which will be on air at 6 PM GMT, and of course then at 9 PM GMT, round number 5 and 6 of the Proto Ice $1,000 Cup from Suzuka.
Well,
that's one.
We've been on air for too long, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Suzuka. Suzuka. I know what I mean. We're still in Japan.
Well, we don't care where it is. It's going to be interesting, so tune in. And, well, if you've seen this, it hasn't been particularly the race where you see much of fights and much of position switches. But, however, one of the most interesting races so far. Definitely more interesting than the DWC race. And after this race of 109 laps done in the series, 101 have been led by Alexius Iacola.
Wow. Yeah, and of course next week we're going to the Brickyard, to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and you know I have a thing about that place because it's just so beautiful. But 73 laps around the road course, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's been alluded to, turn number 1 is going to be difficult. We'll be on air again from 1:30 PM GMT for round number 3 of the iRacing.com Pro Series of Road Racing, the historic Indianapolis Motor Speedway with the banking, the yard of bricks and everything. That'll be next week. We'll be back in a couple of hours for the Blondie's MX5 World Tour. In the meantime, for myself and Marius Gonenbeck and Yodi Backerman working the wonderful cameras. Bye-bye!
Race fans, it's time for those most famous words in motorsports. Drivers, start your engines!
Michael Conti comes up at a corner number 4 in the checkered flag. He wins his first NASCAR iRacing.